OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Right, a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Thursday morning. It's Thursday of an impossibly long week. It's the 21st of January in what is proving to be already an impossibly long year. Eoin, Sheahan, good morning to you. How are you?
All the positivity coming through on Skype this morning. I'm very well.
We're alive. We're alive. We're talking about football. We're talking about rugby. We're talking about GA. We're talking about whatever anybody else wants us to be talking about out there. Get involved. 0879 180 180 is the text number. You can text that, or you can, we've got a newfangled comment box on Instagram as well, if that's your thing. And people are getting in touch, talking to us about the halfback partnership. We're going to talk about with Ronan O'Gara, about who should play 9 and 10 for Ireland and what style we should play a little bit later on. But we're going to kick off this morning by talking about yesterday's football. Manchester United are back. That was a very Fergie era, squeaky bum 2-1, where there's a moment of genius from a star player and then they ride their luck a little bit at the end. So not quite a goal-mouth scramble, but it could have been 2-2. There was a chance the keeper makes a save. Schmeichel-esque. It's like, they're bumbling their way into contention.
Oh, big time. They've played half of their games at this point and they've got the 40 points. So I think that there has been a common belief that a team in their 80s is going to win the Premier League this season, and Manchester United just need to replicate this and they will be in the mix come the end of the season. Like, if you're looking through the contenders at the moment, like United on 40, City on 38, Leicester on 38 and Liverpool on 34, you wouldn't be surprised if a lot of neutrals at this point are picking Manchester United for this brawl that's going to emerge over these next few weeks, because, as you say, you've got a moment of quality from one of your best players last night, but it's the star talent that they have in a multitude of positions now, which is really starting to shine through. Like Bruno Fernandes, for example, last night was the angriest man I've ever seen. Like, who hurt you, Bruno, would be my question to him. Like, is he reading the criticism? But potentially he is, of his recent performances. Like, his recent performances haven't been that bad. He just isn't scoring a goal in every single game. He hasn't been absolutely world class in every single game. He's been good. And maybe that's getting to him. Maybe the criticism of that has got to him. And last night he was like, no way. I'm not allowing this to go on any further, and I'm going to kill you. And he almost did. He hit the post right before he set up Cavani's goal, and on another night he would have scored a couple of goals. He was fantastic as Solskjaer. Probably the adjective that Solskjaer himself used to describe him. Cavani, another brawler in that Manchester United team. If you're picking any of the number 9s from the teams that I've mentioned there, Jamie Vardy and Edinson Cavani are the two you want. And for me, United are going to finish higher than Leicester City, and for that reason they have got a serious edge going up against City or Liverpool.
In terms of how the team lined out last night, what was the formation? How did they fit Pogba in?
Pogba popped up on the right-hand side, as you'll remember, for the goal, but Greenwood had gone off by that point, hadn't he? So Pogba was playing a little bit deeper up until that point, and you had Bruno Fernandes in the 10, you had Martial on the left and Greenwood on the right, behind Cavani up front. You had Pogba and Fred then behind that, obviously, for anybody who didn't catch the game. But the question now is, what is the best combination of that front four? So Cavani, for me, if there's a cup final tomorrow, starts. Fernandes, if there's a cup final tomorrow, obviously starts. He starts in every single game he can possibly play at this point. And then the question is regarding who are the other two positions for Manchester United in that attack. Rashford has to be one, in my opinion, and Martial, on past glory and on past talent that he's shown, probably has to be the other one. Like, his position is up for grabs at the moment, for sure. That left side, if you're going to proceed with that, who's going to play on the left hand side? If it's not going to be Rashford, for example, if he's on the right, that's just the remaining question that Solskjaer has to figure out. But maybe Martial just finds himself into a bit of form over the next little while, a bit more form, as the rest of the players are continuing this brilliant vein of performances that they're showing, and he'll play himself into it. So that's just going to be a bonus for them at this point. You can't expect everybody to always be shooting the lights out in this team.
Yeah, you just need someone to be shooting the lights out at all times, and that's what Liverpool don't have at the moment. Nobody is for the last period of time, and all of a sudden they find themselves quite far back. Obviously they've got a game in hand which would take the bare look of the 6 points that they're behind Manchester United off the top of the table off, and that's a game against Burnley, I think, in just a couple of days' time. Is that tonight?
Liverpool Burnley tonight.
So that's tonight. So we'll see. I mean, what happened last night, I think the other thing that is impressive about what happened from Manchester United's perspective is that they followed on from Manchester City knowing that City had won, and so the pressure was on. So these are the games where there is that pressure now. The Burnley game last week was pressure because it was the first time that they could go top of the table, and the performance was scratchy, but they answered it. The game last night was pressure because, well, they went down a goal against a team who have managed to scratch draws against all the good teams recently, and they fought back. So there's all the hallmarks of a good side are there. There's still questions that people are asking about Solskjaer's tactical acumen, and I wonder, is the fact that other teams don't know how he's going to play actually a positive as opposed to the negative that it's been painted so far. But let's talk a bit about Manchester City, because they were anointed 2 or 3 weeks ago as the team most likely to win the league. People are coming off that opinion a little bit because Manchester United are proving to be a bit more durable. But surely we should still be saying that a team like Manchester City have all of the advantages going their way at the moment.
Yeah, I'm very much less inclined to say that than I would have been 2 weeks ago. I think that you're right in saying that the Manchester United form is all part of the Manchester City context at the moment, where there was this assumption that City would run away with it because Liverpool aren't as good as they were last season. But that's just a way too simplistic approach and ruling completely out what Leicester City and Manchester United can do in terms of the sustainability of their title challenge. And Spurs, we haven't even mentioned Spurs. I was talking about number 9s a moment ago, and Harry Kane didn't even come into it. But City, you say that everything is possibly going their way, or that they've been showing that over the last couple of minutes. Well, 59 minutes played last night, Kevin De Bruyne goes off. And it's not just fantasy football managers who are giving out about that. It's surely Manchester City fans who look at that and are a little bit worried about the fact that their star player has had to go off before the crunch of the game. It didn't look anything too serious, but with Kevin De Bruyne, he's had an injury pretty much every season. He's had injuries this season, and you never really get a full, perfect season out of him. So that could be a serious concern for them. And you think that potentially winning a Premier League title at this point is going to require so much depth. But in many positions, Manchester City just haven't shown that. And the number 9 position, again, to go back to that, is the area where they've had no depth. That without Sergio Aguero, they look like a different side.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, the talent means that they can smash teams if they're on song. But it also means that they can get caught in a position like they were last night, where they needed a massive stroke of luck to beat a team like Aston Villa, a good team, really good team. But I think that they could look so good without putting a team to the sword, and that's a problem that still is present for this team.
Let's hear from a couple of the characters involved last night. Pogba smashed one in. If you haven't seen this, go and check it out on YouTube. He's obviously been brilliant recently. Where has the turnaround come from?
Like I said before, I love winning. It's all about winning. I will always be happy when I win, and I will always be happy when I'm on the pitch. And today we won, so I'm happy. The day we lose, I will be angry again. So this is me.
Essentially, you were all crap for ages. Now you're good. Okay, I'm happy to play. I'm bringing my ball back. And then this is Dean Smith, the Villa manager. Villa robbed last night, or maybe they were, maybe they weren't. They defended really well, but they were up against it for the whole game. This is their manager sent off. Here he is explaining what he'd said to the fourth official.
What's Tyrone meant to do? Just let it go through, or do we just stand 10 yards offside all the time in the next few games now? I don't understand that. And I thought that at least go over to the screen, or be told to go over to the screen and have a look at it, because it looked a clear offside when I looked at the screen myself. And when I realised they weren't even looking at the screen, the VAR hadn't mentioned anything, just told the fourth official that I thought they'd had juggling balls for Christmas.
And that was the yellow card. He doesn't explain why he got the red card. He got a straight red after that. So it was the double whammy of the yellow and then a straight red on top of it. Unless it was a second yellow. 2 yellows, I don't know. But it looked like a straight red. And so he obviously says something a bit more than the juggling balls for Christmas. Look, I don't know that rule well enough to understand either. In commentary, they said, we've heard VAR say the goal is okay, and that's why they're not checking it. What do you do?
The rule is there to, I guess, support their decision, and they could pull out this trump card after they've made the decision saying, well, look, it says it in the rule book, so we got the whole thing right. But I think in practice, it's a completely ridiculous decision. I'm surprised that you're not more angry this morning. Like, Villa defended well. Like, you can't, like, as a sports fan, surely you're not like, oh, well, that happens. They deserve to win because they were the better team last night. But no, sometimes defending well against a team who's playing better than you is the entire point.
No, exactly.
And getting screwed by officials is really annoying.
It was really enjoyable. But there were, I mean, look, it did have the bang of Ireland, Netherlands 1-0 when we're wrestling their players to the ground and the penalty's not being given. The second goal kind of takes away any of the kind of actual heat you might have. I mean, I don't really think they should be penalties either, because you're looking away and your hand is in a natural position, but they're all being given at the moment. So you can't really have too many complaints about that. As a Villa fan, Villa beat Manchester City 3 times in the last decade, over the whole time that they played them. And generally the result was, there were 4-0s and there was a few 6s in there. So Villa being competitive properly and creating chances is just this thing that you're very happy about. And they're really, really good to watch in all the games, even when they're facing a better team, because they're super creative and they like to keep the ball.
What is the ambition as a Villa fan this year? Is it Europa League realistically?
Just to keep this up. Like, where it matters, it doesn't, like, there's loads of really good at the moment. So if Everton win their games in hand, they're 2 points behind Manchester United and they'd be in second. Like, and if Villa had won their 4 games in hand, they would have been top. Like, that's all nonsensical. So just keep playing this way and keep Jack Grealish. That's the ambition. Everything else will fall into, the trophies will follow, the Europa League will follow if you can keep playing like this, keep buying good young players, keep buying players who immediately fit into your system, and show that your acumen in the transfer market is excellent. You just want the club to be well run, and therefore it's going to be enjoyable to watch for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they've got some good fixtures coming up as well to put themselves into that position. Like, I think that, yeah, like that's the big one. Saturday night in the middle of the FA Cup, we have this oasis of Premier League calm, which is fantastic. Like, is this not the sort of season though where you have to say to yourself they kind of need to do something, because what if things get more normal next year? Like, the same goes for Everton, as you mentioned, and of course for West Ham and Southampton. But like, you've got Chelsea and Arsenal flailing around nearby, that maybe, if they don't get their act together fully before the end of the season, there could be 1 or 2 European spots opening up at the end. And like, Villa would fancy themselves against West Ham and Everton to get that spot, and Southampton, would they not? Yeah,
and look, but the trouble would be then that perhaps next year they don't have squads to run those 2 things and they end up in a relegation battle and you're right back to square one. So I just want to see that I'm not trapped in a perpetual now. And I can see that there's a long-term future, and I want the future to be good quality football week in, week out. That's all I'm asking for. Just good quality football week in, week out with some world-class players like Jack Grealish in the team. 7:43 this morning, we'd love to hear from you. OTB AM brought to you live in association with Gillette every morning. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Phil Egan, good morning.
How are you doing? How are you getting on?
What's the crack?
Well, Manchester United are the crack, aren't they? Top of the Premier League, came from a goal down, 7th time this season. Away from home, they've come from behind to win in the Premier League. 2-1 win over Fulham. Paul Pogba, just like he did against Burnley last week, comes up with a second-half winner. This one, a much better goal. Cracking strike with his left foot. Great touch beforehand. Bit of a wind behind him, said, you know what, I'm going to have a crack here. I think everyone was surprised that he took it on, but what a strike it was. And so 17 games unbeaten away in the Premier League for Manchester United. Last time they did that was the treble winning season, the 98-99 season. And said all after Ademola Lookman scored for Fulham in the 5th minute, Edison Cavani on target again, showing how important he is, a striker that understands the game. And a stat that I had to check because I just couldn't believe it, that Scott Parker last night it's the first time that they've gone ahead in a game under Scott Parker, Fulham, and they've actually lost the game. So 41st game under Scott Parker that they've gone ahead, but unlike the other 40 games, they actually ended up on the losing side. But what it means anyway, United top of the league, 2 points ahead of Manchester City. Obviously City had gone top for a couple of hours with that 2-0 win at home to Aston Villa. A lot of controversy in that one surrounding the first goal from Bernardo Silva. Was Audrey interfering with play? The rules state he wasn't after the touch from Jerome Mings. That obviously incensed Dean Smith. He was sent off by John Moss, and Gundogan wrapped it up with a penalty. But City 6 league wins in a row, showing why they're the title favourites. But certainly the 2 Manchester clubs bang in form at the moment. Liverpool are starting to lose ground. Big game for them tonight against Burnley. Have to beat them. 4 league games without a win. That game at Anfield kicks off at 8 o'clock. Liverpool hoping to have Joel Matip back for that one. Celtic have gone 4 league games without a win. First time in 21 years that's happened. They drew 2-2 away to Livingston in the snow. Scott Brown came on, and within 5 minutes he'd been sent off, and it means they're 20 points behind Rangers. They've 2 games in hand, but Rangers, we can now start referring to them as the champions-elect. Some interesting stories on the continent last night. Cristiano Ronaldo scored for Juventus in their 2-0 win over Napoli in the Italian Super Cup. So now he has scored the most club goals in history. He surpasses Josef Bican. 760 goals for Cristiano Ronaldo in his club career. So those goals for Juve, Manchester United, Real Madrid and Sporting Lisbon. And speaking of Real, they were stunned last night. A humiliating exit from the Copa del Rey in the last 32, beaten by Alcoyano from the 3rd tier of Spanish football, who had a player sent off. The game was in an extra time and they won 2-1, and Zinedine Zidane, when the goal went in, you could see he was just almost laughing to himself, going, how has this happened? But just piles more pressure on him. Some golf going on at the moment, first European Tour event of the season. Rory McIlroy and Padraig Harrington have both teed off on day 1 of the Abu Dhabi Championship. This is the event Shane Lowry won a couple of years ago. McIlroy's 2 under after 5, Harrington level par after 3, Laurie Cantor leads on 3 under. Lowry and Graham McDowell will tee off after 11 this morning. Ireland are taking on Afghanistan in cricket in the first of 3 World Cup qualifiers in Abu Dhabi. Afghanistan won the toss. They chose the bat. They're 94 without loss in the 19th over. And finally, for me, Grand National winning jockey David Mullins has decided to retire at the age of 24. The nephew of Willie Mullins, who won the 2016 Grand National on board Rule the World, at 9 Grade 1 wins to his name.
Yeah, big shock that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on with Thom Malone too. Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. It's 7:47 this morning. Let me tell you about what's coming up on the show. So Daniel Harris is going to join us to talk to us about Man United, Man City and the title race and where we are at the moment. So that's football until about 8:05. We'll bring you the newspaper headlines. Then Ronan O'Gara is going to join us at 8:10. John Duggan's going to join us at 5:30. We'll update you on everything else that's changing in the world of sport. We'll talk a bit of racing with him too. Cian Fahey is going to explain why you should be watching the NFL this weekend. It is the championship weekend, so we get to find out who plays in the Super Bowl after this. And then our Cheltenham 10 to watch from Thom Malone coming your way at 9 o'clock. What to watch with Sue Murphy on whatever streaming service or TV platform you have. And then Paul O'Donovan is talking to us about what he hopes is the build-up to the Olympic Games in Tokyo. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Daniel Harris is with us at 7:48 this morning. Daniel, good morning to you.
Hiya.
Maybe we should start with City before we get to Manchester United. The performances that City have been putting in just recently have made most people anoint them as favourites and most likely champions. Is there any cause for pause in that with, just they're... Obviously, they did break down Villa last night, but it took them a while, and there's still just something missing sometimes when it comes to that. They remind me a little bit of that amazing Arsenal team who would try and beat you to death with 1,000 cuts and then forget to score.
City, they're not a perfect team. I think that the reason people feel that they might win it is because they've won it before, they're on a really good run of form and they're defending well. So if you take Guardiola's attackers and somehow combine it with the good defending that he's never really had before, then that is hard to beat. I think the problem for City will come probably a little bit later in the season when they've got a really friendly run of games coming up, but the games will start to get harder around the time the Champions League comes back. They've got the League Cup final, they're still in the FA Cup, and navigating a route through all those games with players who, like Fernandinho, is not fit that often, Aguero's not fit that often, De Bruyne went off last night and generally is in and out these days in terms of fitness, is when those games start coming. So I think if the other teams can stay with them until then it will be close. Whereas if City can build themselves a lead, then it will be more likely they can win it from the front, I think.
Do they have the requisite firepower to do that? They're going to have to rely on a lot of goals coming from their midfield and their defence.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we've got to remember that Villa are a really good side now. That was actually a really good game, one of the best games I've seen this season, particularly the second half. So beating Villa is a good result, even though they got it in a slightly, I wouldn't say fortuitous way, but a strange law of the game happened to work in their favour. So yeah, they will need goals from midfield, but they've got goals from midfield, and what they also have is options on the bench to change games, and particularly when the games are as they are coming so quickly, the ability to rotate between games and then bring on fresh players during games when other teams with smaller squads don't have that is going to make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and look, the quality of the strength and depth of all these teams is going to be tested over the next while. At the moment, Manchester United have been relatively fortunate with injuries, but so Kyle Walker went off and De Bruyne goes off, and we'll see. We have to wait and see exactly what the nature of those injuries is. But from Manchester United's perspective, it's hard not to draw parallels with the early Ferguson era, where there was significant questions about the manager again and again and again. He was given time. They built some momentum. They start to get a bit scratchy in terms of being able to win results. They go behind a lot. The games are always there's an element of cavalier that you're like, well, I'm definitely going to watch this. And then the winning starts to happen and it doesn't stop. I mean, it's obviously ridiculous, but it's not that ridiculous.
No, in the same way as City, they've got a lot of options. And in theory, apart from Bruno Fernandes and Harry Maguire, who play pretty much every game, most of their players shouldn't be that tired because they get rotated in and out. And what you can see now is one of the signs of a team that knows what it's doing is that you can change its component parts and it's still able to play. They're not playing as fluently as they can, but they are doing enough to get it done. And even when they went behind last night, I mean, I definitely didn't. I thought they would still win because they're able to create enough good situations to score the goals that they need. And in general, they're defending just about well enough. I mean, against Leicester, they got caught because they were 2-1 up with not a lot of time to go against Leicester. And I mean, sometimes it is just football's quite a chaotic, random game. And against Leicester, Jamie Vardy's shot was going wide. It hit Axel Tuanzebe and it went in. And last night, the ball, I can't remember who the striker was, the ball hit Eric Bailly and it went wide. And it didn't go wide by very much. And football is often a game of small margins. And it depends how you look at these things. If you look at a team that keeps winning close games, you can say, this is the team that things are happening for, that believes in itself. But it can often be quite hard to sustain a run of narrow wins, and eventually you get caught. But if United can get through the next few games, like they've got Sheffield United, they've got obviously Liverpool in the cup at the weekend, and then they've got Sheffield United at home in midweek, and the games, that kind of game is a game you would expect them to win, and eventually other teams start dropping points. I mean, United might start dropping points before them, but I think the thing is they've got, as I said, they've got loads of options on the bench. Whichever team is picked has loads of goals in it. And one of the things that struck me last night is they're scoring lots and lots of good goals. They've scored loads and loads of different, really good goals this season. And that speaks of a team that is enjoying its football and that knows what it's doing. And I think that you do have to give a lot of credit to the manager, because if there are a lot of players now who are improving, look at Paul Pogba last night, for example. Since Paul Pogba's agent sabotaged the team before United played Leipzig, he was great in the Leipzig game, and he's been pretty good since. And it would have been easy for Ole to see his ass when Pogba's agent did that, but he didn't. And even if Pogba leaves in the summer, he's getting the best out of him prior to then. If you look at Luke Shaw is now a good player, which sounds like a very bizarre sentence to say, but it's true. He is. He's defending really well. He's attacking really well. He's able to take the ball and carry it forward. I mean, did you know that Luke Shaw was 6'1"?
No.
Because he doesn't play or behave like someone who's 6'1", and he's starting to impose himself physically in attack and defence. He's winning tackles. He's winning headers. And Ole was asked about Shaw before the game, and he basically said that he can drive forward with the ball, but he didn't really believe he could do it. And they've been forcing him to do it and convincing him he can do it. And they've also, now he's happy and he's enjoying his football. And you can see how that would not have been the case under Jose Mourinho, who, when he played well, said, it was his legs and my brain, or whatever it was he said. And you see, it takes different kinds of personality to build a football team, usually. Not always. So Mourinho's team at Chelsea, the reason why Mourinho's first team, great team at Chelsea, worked was because he had so many players who shared similar competitive personalities like him. But when you look at someone like Luke Shaw is very obviously not that kind of personality. Him and Anthony Martial in particular look like players who've got as far as they have in the game, more or less on talent. Like they haven't spent that long thinking about their game. They haven't had to spend that long working at their game because naturally they're good. They have all the physical attributes and they have all the technical attributes. But what Ole has given Luke Shaw is he's given him the belief that he can extract the most from that ability, and we're seeing that now. And it's not a coincidence that consecutive United managers, and even Mauricio Pochettino at Southampton, who he played well for, but he had trouble with him. And what we're seeing now is Ole has shown patience and probably a little bit of tough love by signing his replacement. And you're now seeing someone who is influencing games. And it's not just about, when you talk about influencing games, are you making last-ditch saving tackles or are you creating or scoring goals? He's constantly getting United up the pitch and offering an option down the left side, and that's making a big difference to the way the team are attacking. And you're even seeing it on the right-hand side with Wan-Bissaka, who's turning into quite a useful ball carrier, in that what he supplies at the end won't always be what you want him to supply at the end. But once he gets going, ploughing down one side, he's quite hard to stop. What he still has to improve is he has to be less dozy. He has to stop not noticing people over his shoulder and stop getting caught under the ball. But you're seeing players who are making progress. Scott McTominay is another one. He's a better player now than he was this time last year. And when you add it together with, you've got players who are touched by brilliance, and then you've got players who are supplying drive like Rashford and Fernandes and Maguire, then you can see a team that can do something. I mean, I have been lucky enough to spend the majority of my life really watching teams that win league titles. So feel like I have a decent idea of what one looks like. And the reality, it doesn't look quite like this one. But then it doesn't look quite like the other teams that are competing for the league title either. And because United have a lot of sources of goals, that makes them dangerous.
The Paul Pogba situation, it's a lot of people have been questioning the motivation for why he's playing so well. But I wonder, is it, Daniel, just that he's found himself in a team that is winning a lot? And he mentioned this after the game yesterday, that I love to win. And that is the sole motivation for him, that he's really enjoying his football and is playing really well. What scenario do you see come the end of the season if Manchester United have won the Premier League and Paul Pogba has dragged him to that title? Is it as simple as he's a club legend and he stays put and puts pen to paper on a new deal?
I don't know. I think the first thing to say about Pogba is that it's been really clear over the last, 4 years now, that he's not someone who's going to lift a crap team. Like that's not what he does. And there are players like that. I guess Mesut Ozil is another one who they don't have the. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think intensity is probably the right word for Paul Pogba for sure. That he's not able to come up with the bi-weekly intensity to use his unbelievable ability to lift a crap team. Like he's not able to do that. But what we're seeing is, as the team are improving, so he is improving, in that once all the other component parts are working, if you've got a player who's touched by genius like Paul Pogba is, and because the things that people associate with him, he has unbelievable footwork, he has beautiful imagination, he has a zest, he has a competitive charisma that he can impose on a game, and he can just do things that will take your breath away. And that's what the case was at Juventus, where he had Pirlo, he had Marchisio, and he had a team that worked and was the best team in the league. And then that is going to encourage someone like Pogba, whose personality is not like Roy Keane, where you're a mongrel who lets it all hang out every week, whatever the circumstance, when you're able to elevate what is around you. And that's what we're seeing with Paul Pogba now. He knows that the team's good, and same with France at the World Cup. And that was encouraging him to find the most competitive element of himself. And you could criticise him and say, well, for the money that he's being paid and for the talent that he has, he should have been like this all the time. And that is true, but he's not built that way. And so it just doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy what he's supplying now. In terms of whether he stays at United, I don't know. Obviously, if Paul Pogba can supply this, or if all it took was United being good for Pogba to do this, you could just get all put out and say, well, it shouldn't be like that. Or you could say, well, it is like this. So now you're getting the most from Paul Pogba, replacing him with a player of similar ability. Good luck with that. So United might now want to keep Pogba, whereas previously perhaps they wouldn't. So I feel like at this point the decision will probably be up to Pogba, and how happy he is now is probably related to how well United are playing. But if he, as a footballer, fancies playing in a different league, or if he, as a human being, fancies living in a different country, then you would always let that player. I mean, not you. I would always let that player go.
What is Manchester United's best front four at this point, Daniel?
Front four. I mean, for me, I would say the best midfield United have is McTominay, Pogba, and Bruno. And I think, they're sort of playing 4-2-3-1. I'd much prefer them to play a 4-3-3. And I think that's when they produce their best stuff. It's what they do when they're chasing a goal. And in my opinion, they should almost always be chasing a goal. And then the front three, I would definitely have Cavani in the middle, because ultimately he wants to score goals. I was surprised Cavani didn't play at Liverpool, because I thought that Ole would want, if a chance fell, he wouldn't want it falling to Martial. He would want it falling to Cavani. I mean, in the end, the chances fell to Bruno and to Pogba. But I would definitely have Cavani in the middle, because United's finishing isn't ruthless enough, and he is the one most likely to take anything that turns up. I would have Rashford on the left, and I know he's out of form at the moment, but I would probably have Mason Greenwood on the right, because I wouldn't want to have to move Marcus Rashford over to the right. But what United are fortunate in that they have a lot of players, and if one way of doing it doesn't work, then they can go a different way. And I don't think it will be long before Diallo will be fighting for a place in the first team either. And I think he is one who people who have spent time watching him and spent time playing with him seem to think is brilliant, and who might just fill a hole that has existed more or less since Nani left.
That question, the point you make about them being able to do something different, it has been a stick to beat Solskjaer with, that he doesn't know his best lineup, he doesn't know his best team, he doesn't know his best formation. In some ways, while I can see how people would be concerned about that, the other flip side of that, and the other way of looking at that, is that actually here's a manager who's willing to change and who isn't wedded to a single system, and who therefore is actually adapting to the information that comes to him in the middle of matches and changing things accordingly, which, if you look at it that way, is actually a great strength in modern football.
Yeah, I think so. That it was difficult when it was a change of formation every week and a change of personnel every week. That was more problematic. But now the team is settled, and you can see from how they play, they believe in each other, they believe in what they're doing, and they think they're going to win. And that makes a massive amount of difference, because ultimately talent and mentality are much more important than tactics and coaching. So when the players are when you've got good players, which United do, and the mentality is right, which it is, then that gives you scope to fiddle a little bit. But they're not really fiddling so much with the tactics now. Like, they're more or less most of the time playing some kind of 4-2-3-1. And as I said, I think most of the good teams, the best teams around, play 4-3-3. And I think ideally that is the way that United should play. The problem is a bit that they're mainly playing Bruno as a number 10. I think partly because he's playing a lot of games, so you want him to do as little running as possible. And also his scoring and his chance creation are just so good that you don't really want to play him as a number 8, because you haven't got anyone else. But eventually, whether it's Pogba or whether it's someone else, I think the best way to play is with an athletic number 6 and with 2 number 8s. So they do have that possibility, because Bruno can definitely play that position, definitely put in a shift. And I think it's that change, once that is the thing that is preventing them from controlling big games, because when you play with a 6, an 8 and a 10, it's much harder to control the game when you've really only got 2 men in midfield, because your number 10 is kind of roaming around just waiting for opportunities to make that crucial difference. But what they're doing at the moment is they're not changing the formation so much, but they're able to change the personnel, because everyone is fit and everyone is in form. So I think that the time has definitely come for Bruno to get a rest. I thought that they would try and get him through one more game. It's really difficult. And who wants to say, is Liverpool in the cup, put your best player on the bench? But the title is there to be won. And the kind of team that I would expect Liverpool to play, United should be able to beat without Bruno. So I'd be looking at resting Bruno on Sunday, and then resting him again at home to Sheffield United on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it is. And then they should be in a decent position, because most of the other players have rested. And that's always really the thing with the changes. I mean, Alex Ferguson probably didn't know what his best team was in the last last few years. The team that played Chelsea in the 2008 European Cup final never played together before or after, and he had everyone fit.
Yeah.
So you can sometimes do that. I think you do lose cohesion when you do that. I've always felt that the best football United played in the late Fergie year was in 2006-07. And what happened at the end of that season was they played Milan in the European Cup semi-final, and Milan were good, but United were better, I felt. United should have beaten that team. But they had Ferdinand and Vidic were both injured, and they ended up basically running out of gas, and then they lost a really tame cup final to Chelsea as well. So that summer, Fergie went out and he bought Anderson, he bought Nani, and he bought Hargreaves, and he bought Tevez. And what that did was it gave him options, and it meant that he was always changing the team, and they lost cohesion. I'm not sure they were ever quite as consistently fluent again, but it meant that they didn't reach the end of the season just absolutely finished. Yeah. And so Solskjaer has that now. He has. I mean, I think the players still probably are a bit tired. They look a bit tired, but the players around the league are tired because most of them are getting rested less often than United, and they're not winning almost every game, most of them, and none of them are top of the league. No, and that
obviously helps as well. Daniel, we got to go. That was great. Thanks
All right,
again.
See you again.
Daniel Harris giving us his thoughts there. It's 6 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. Plenty of good stuff still to come. Ronan O'Gara is next. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk TV for the weekend, and we're also going to mark your card for the build-up to Cheltenham with Thom Malone. That's all coming up after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
This Sunday on Off the Ball, we'll keep you on top of all the action in the FA Cup fourth round, including at Old Trafford, as Manchester United take on Liverpool. Roscommon legend Shane Curran will join Joe for an in-depth career chat, and Matt Williams will be among our rugby panellists. George Hamilton and Tommy Martin are the guests on the paper review, plus we'll hear from former Dundalk goalkeeper Gary Rogers on his recent retirement. All that and lots more on this Sunday's Off the Ball. We're live from 1 until 7.
Off the Ball. Don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. For the first time ever, bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest game of the week right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18 plus.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7 minutes past 8 this morning. Let's take a look at the sports pages for you. I'll tell you what's coming up on otbsports.com. The Men Who Cried for Help and Me. This is Kieran Bradley's brilliant piece about, it's a follow-up to his piece about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe even a little bit less, and talking about men dealing with depression in particular, and he talks about the benefits that people have received from counselling. So I would urge you to check that out this morning and to share it widely. It's an important piece. It's a race between Chelsea and Manchester United for Rodgers, says Damien Delaney. So do Manchester United want to make a move now, and they think they've got the second coming of Alex Ferguson? And is it that close to being a done deal for Brendan Rodgers? There's a couple more there as well. So Cheltenham countdown: can Envoy, Allen, Shishkin and Monkfish succeed? Thom Malone's going to tell us that. Ireland are not set up for a petit general. That's we're going to have that conversation about 9s and 10s with Ronan O'Gara in just a moment. And the EPCR chair criticises French government over Champions Cup suspension. So a war of words is brewing there. In the rest of the pages, it's all about Pogba. Pogba stunner, Pogba thunderbolt in the Examiner. It's a stunner in the Irish Times. It's Leap Pog is the back page headline. In the Daily Star there, Red Roar is the back there on the Mirror. It's Advantage Manchester. So it's a big old gap at the top of the table, Eoin, isn't it? If you're a Liverpool fan, you're like, this game tonight's a big game against Burnley. It's not supposed to be a big game against Burnley, but it is.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into this idea that when you look at a fixture list, it's tinted by the teams that you're talking about. Like, I mean, if it's Manchester United's fixture list or Liverpool's fixture list, the way Liverpool are playing at the moment, it always looks a little bit tougher. Like going into that Burnley game last week, I almost had more confidence in Manchester United getting over the line in that, even though it was scrappy in the end, than I do about Liverpool tonight, which is really unusual that their front line just isn't firing at the moment, and that's a big concern. It is at Anfield though, compared to United being on the road in Turf Moor last week, so it should be an easier fixture. But this is the sort of game where Liverpool should be like, wait, hold on a minute, stop your nonsense. We are in this title race. We are absolutely going back for our title here, and like there's no reason why it shouldn't be. Like if we saw an angry Bruno Fernandes last night, why shouldn't we see an angry Mo Salah tonight, for example?
The Pogba finds instant response to City is the back page headline on the sports section of the Irish Independent. And farming out Leinster players will kill inter-pro rivalry, says Neil Francis there. It's an interesting column, Mo, and I expect you'll be glued to that a little bit later on after the show. Get an opportunity to parse what the great man thinks. And finally, for now, AS in Spain. Buongiorno. I don't know what that means. We had to look it up. It's an embarrassment. And the score is 2-1. So Real Madrid were eliminated in the Copa del Rey last night in extra time against third-tier Alcoyano. I mean, if Zidane can survive this, he can survive anything. He'll be like cockroaches surviving nuclear war. And then is there Sir Richard Freeman. Oh, and we've all forgotten about the Richard Freeman story. So Richard Freeman, something to do with Jiffy bags and Sky and all that kind of stuff.
Did you call him Sir Richard Freeman?
No, doctor, did I? I mean,
I thought he like maybe he was knighted and I missed it, but he's certainly a doctor. He has had a request for a further adjournment. This is still going on, by the way. People who've been paying half a year to this, like, it's still going on. It was supposed to be postponed, I think, a little bit longer, but it's due to get back underway tomorrow for his tribunal. But he had a request turned down to adjourn it again because he wanted to help deliver the COVID mass vaccination program. So obviously he is a doctor, and an adjournment was deemed neither proportionate or in the interests of justice. So this has been going on for 2 years, basically, this entire trial. It's probably in the interest of the public as much as anything else to get this thing done and to stop spending money on this entire thing, as much as it is to actually get the country vaccinated. He says that he's got a strong commitment to continue his COVID work, and they requested an adjournment to allow him to undertake the duties that the practice wish him to. We strongly believe that the COVID crisis position should take precedence. But the GMC came back and said a delay would mean the hearing not concluding until sometime in the autumn of 2021 at the earliest, which would surely be unacceptable to all concerned. Yeah. Here's the issue. If Dr. Richard Freeman is giving you an injection for coronavirus, there will be no proof that you ever got vaccinated. The laptop on which he types in the details saying Joe Blogs vaccinated against COVID, that will probably go missing. And you will have no proof that you can travel abroad. You have no proof to Ryanair that you can jab and go. You will be lost in the ether of nothingness, not knowing if you are immune or not to the disease.
12 minutes past 8 this morning. We'll come back to the papers a little bit later on. We'll bring you more on that Richard Freeman story over the next while. I'm sure everybody has forgotten what it's all about. In the meantime, let's turn our attention to rugby. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, sure. Great. Yourself?
Good, yeah. We're doing our depth chart as we do every year around this time, ahead of the Six Nations and the 9s and 10s. There's been a debate opened up by Andy Dunn about what the role of the Irish 9 should be, and the compare and contrast the Le Petit Général and the French outlook, where the 9 seems to take on a lot more responsibility. I'm obviously paraphrasing and simplifying that a little bit.
I listened to a bit of it. I listened to it. First of all, I listened to him all the time. He's a brilliant analyst, and he gets you thinking, Andy does. And there's so much in that interview, all right, that merits discussion, and a lot of it will probably be touched on this morning. But so many of his points, as usual, are very, very, very accurate. I think he's a brilliant analyst, one of the best out there, if not the best.
So let's talk then about the 9 and the role of the 9 in Irish life. We obviously love our 10s. It's the tradition of who we are, stretching way back beyond. The Tony Ward, Ollie Campbell, and even back before that, there were 10s. And so, is it just that the 10s
there was the number 9s were big in Ireland too. If you go back a little bit before that, one of my heroes was Michael Bradley from Cork Constitution. I think obviously the Welsh number 9s are very famous. It was probably maybe because they were so good in the 80s in Wales that maybe Ireland couldn't follow them in that regard. So that's when maybe the number 10, as you said, with Ali Campbell, Tony Ward, Ralph Keyes, I suppose. The 10 was the bigger jersey, there's no doubt about that, or the more illustrious jersey perhaps. But getting back to the number 9, yeah, I think we're at a time where the best player in the world is a number 9, Antoine Dupont, and at times he looks like he's playing a different game to everyone else. For those probably not that familiar with him, I think just a quick little search of him, just this guy, World Player of the Year, wrapped up most definitely for this year, and if he continues the way he's going, very, very, very few people will touch him.
What is it that makes him so special?
I think he does his basics really well, Ger, but also then just, I suppose, spending a bit of time in France, you understand the way Toulouse play, and it's probably very opposite to how Ireland play in terms of there's such a focus on the ruck. With Toulouse, it's all about keeping the ball alive and jeu de bout and trying to, the ball is very precious and it should be kept alive, and we've got to play sexy rugby in that regard. What I think separates him is the fact that I think he can nearly play any position in the back line and do it really well. But at number 9, there's absolutely no threat to the defensive team, it seems like, and there's 3 people on him, and all of a sudden he's pierced and he's gone, and you're like, oh, he'll definitely get caught. Then he comes off either foot, he pirouettes, and he has the capacity, the agility and the strength to grow through, the power and the vision to either put a pass to a guy that you haven't seen, or the opposition most definitely haven't seen, and they score a try.
This is an important cultural point here, where he is obviously has been a very talented player coming up and has been encouraged the whole way, and 9 is the position that they put him in. If he was Irish, would we have decided, okay, you're going to be a 10 because you need to run the game?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, but it's only when you kind of stand back and do a little bit of analysis among the quality and the depth of number 9s, I suppose, playing in France. Like, you're absolutely spoiled for choice. There's probably 10, I think, French 9s that would be in all the Six Nations squads. And that takes a little bit of time to register, but that's quite a big comment there, I would think.
And like, again, is that just because they're encouraged? You encourage your best players to go in there?
No, because they're very good too. But I think I don't know, because I'm trying to figure it out. It's an interesting study, as you say, because a lot of the things that Andy was talking about too, in terms of they're in a better position, obviously, to create tempo. And once they understand what tempo and speeding the game up and speeding and slowing it down looks like, you have a massive advantage if that's your 9. The 10 is on the receiving end of a lot of the good that the 9 does. So in that regard, the petit general, an awful lot of them are just so good with either foot in terms of kicking the ball, but that's a different discussion. But in terms of speeding up the game and their, I suppose, peripheral vision and their vision in general, it's exciting to watch and to probably study them from afar.
And so when that conversation came to Conor Murray, like, I suspect the idea of the rugby that we've played in Ireland has been very structured, that we pride ourselves on our set pieces being excellent and forcing pressure and playing the game in certain areas of the field. And so tempo is less important in that environment. Or is that fair?
I don't think it's less important, no. I would think that's probably where the nitty-gritty comes into it, and the little detail. You can be sure under Joe Schmidt, the structure and knowing your role was hugely, hugely important. And look what they did. And I'll never forget being in the ground in the Aviva in 2018 when they dismantled New Zealand. Not so much on the scoreboard, but in terms of the basics of the game, yes, and in every other aspect. And then they pulled away in the end, obviously. But it was such a comprehensive performance in all aspects. But I think there would be an error in saying that Joe wanted his 9s to feed the people around them religiously. I don't think that would be accurate. I think most definitely, if there's space for the 9 to run, he would have that role. I would be pretty confident in assuming that, and maybe I could be wrong, but I think when you've played such a way for a certain length of time and potentially you're not on top of the reasons why we are doing this, and you don't ask questions, if that's Conor's case, then maybe your understanding of the role you're looking to play, you may not see the best of yourself.
Okay, and is that, have we not seen the best of Conor?
No, I think we have, but I think when Conor was a young fella coming breaking into Munster and Ireland, I think he was an extremely, and he still is, he had such athletic prowess. I think where Conor will, I think he's had a good chance to review his game, and I thought his game against Connacht for Munster was very good, because he was accurate in everything he does. But he does, I think, probably stick to the game plan at all times. I think the two people who can potentially change a game in the flow of a game are your 9 and 10. It's very, very difficult for other people to do that, and I think that's what great players do. I think they have the capacity to see the picture in front of them and either take option A, B, and C, as opposed to, well, this is what we've practiced all week, but if it's not working and they give you a different picture in for that 80 minutes, you have to have that capacity to adapt.
I would suspect anybody who went away from the game plan in those meetings with Joe Schmidt was getting told to stick to the game plan. So he was kind of the perfect scrum half for that era, right?
Yeah, but like, I think your coach wants you to get your boys in the front foot, and there are definitely, I suppose, difference of opinions in how the game can be played. And well, you know, if he broke away from the game plan, he wasn't doing what Joe wanted of him, then I don't think he would have been picked. But he was continuously picked, and he was one of the key men for Ireland, and he still is. So in that regard, I think where Conor, I suppose, at the minute is probably remembered for his box kicking, but he needs to change that, and I think he will change that, and that's what a lot of good competitors do. That they kind of obviously put the team first, and Conor has done that, but he can't put the team first to the detriment of his own performance.
We're going to get into the depth chart in just a moment, Ronan, but one last question on that. Do you think if you had grown up in the south of France rather than in Cork, you would have become a scrum half?
Yeah, probably now with a bit of hindsight, I think, yeah. It's over here. It's kind of they all go to number 9, but I think Ntamack will probably change that again. He's a phenomenal, I suppose, talent, and at such a young age, he's delivering already on the international stage. So he'll make the halfbacks are becoming very, I suppose, what they have and they haven't had in 20 years is stability in the 9 and 10 position. And you look at the confidence that has given their front 5, their back row and their outer backs. It's a game changer for France.
The fact that they're two sensational talents as well, like it's not just stability, it's genius in those two positions as well. Let's talk about our own 9s and 10s. So here's the depth chart that
age on their side.
Exactly, that's the other thing as well. Like, it must be an unbelievably exciting time to be a French rugby fan. Let's take a look at the depth chart then. So we've got you've got Conor Murray as number 1, Luke McGrath is 2, Kieran Marmion is 3, Caelan Blade is 4, and our next gen, our bolter, is Craig Casey. There's no Cooney.
No, I didn't put it in the fact that I think for me, Conor Murray and Cooney, it's a shootout between those two. I think Cooney is 31 in May, Conor's 32 in April. You can't have the two of them in the same squad. I just don't think it works. I think Cooney excels for Ulster because he's a petit general. He does everything for them and he goal kicks. But it's a different set of criteria or, I suppose, measurements when you're looking at Heineken Cup rugby, if you're looking at Test rugby. When you're playing on the Irish Test team, there's a number 10 in Johnny Sexton who kicks the points, who kicks the goals. So that also probably dilutes, I suppose, Cooney's effectiveness by 50%. So that was my logic in terms of that. I think when you're making up your squad in terms of starter, finisher, because with the energy consumed in running the 9 in the modern game and the amount of meters and high speed meters you're looking them to cover, it's very rare that they last the 80. And I think also it's a massive advantage to teams if you have a guy with a skill set that can really add something in the last 15 minutes. So for me, my logic was looking at kind of Murray and Cooney as one, and then one or the other. You know, if Murray was injured, I wouldn't necessarily go straight to Luke McGrath, if you understand me.
You'd be happy to stick Cooney in as the kind of direct replacement as the starter, but not the finisher, and so he's not in the matchday squad? Well,
it depends too who your 10 is, because I think you really have to look at combinations in that regard too, because it's so important. You know, if Johnny Sexton is your number 10, I wouldn't probably go with Cooney either. I don't think that works. For me, Cooney is, you know, he's a points accumulator, and he does an awful lot of things really well at Heineken Cup level. When you come up to test level, it's completely different, and I think you need to work in combinations. And I think Luke McGrath a lot, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity, because I think he probably, I'd say, didn't give it everything with Ireland, but I'd say he was very respectful in the fact that Conor was number one, and he was probably happy to go on the bench. But I don't think that would be his mindset now if he was to get another crack at it. I think he's taken on board the message as well from the Irish management, and he looks very, very polished for Leinster for me.
Okay, let's move on to 10. It's still Sexton as first choice. You've got Joey Carbery down a second. We all can't wait to see Joey Carbery back.
Yeah,
fit.
I suppose. Yeah, that's the sheet is doesn't tell anything during the fact that, right. So how I came about in my decision making for this was in Ulster you have Madigan 32 in a few months, and you have Billy Burns who's 26. Okay. In Munster, there was a peculiar situation where you have JJ Henry and you have Joey Carbery, who's injured, who's the key to everything. Then you have two very promising young 10s in Jack Crowley and Ben Healy. In Connacht, I looked at Jack Carty, and I looked at Conor Fitzgerald, who's a young guy who's going well, and I think who had the jersey for a week or two till Carty bucked up his ideas. And then in Leinster, it's particularly interesting because you kind of have three out halves in the two Byrne brothers, and you've obviously Johnny. Then you have a young guy who I've seen once or twice, a guy called Charlie Tector, I think from Kilkenny College, who looks a really neat player. And then for me, I suppose the outlier is Frawley, in the fact that can he play like Aaron Major did with the kind of Carter-Major combination of your first and second receiver, which probably teams have tried a lot in the past with, Sexton or Carbery on the same team, or Sexton, Rob Kearney. But Frawley looks a very natural ball player. But then I suppose you're taken away from the fact that, you have such competition in the centre in terms of Bundyaki and Ringrose and Henshaw. So, but it all depends really how you want to play the game. So I think it's an area of huge strength with the capacity that could change, because the short term is Johnny, the medium term, long term I don't know. The big difference is that it's rugby's an 80-minute game. It's not like NFL where your quarterback comes in for a few seconds to pull off a play and then there's a pause. The people, I think, understand how difficult it is at the very top to play really competitively into your late 30s. It potentially can be done, but I think it's not like other sports where you're in constant movement in the game, and it has so many challenges for the body.
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult for Sexton to maintain this level for much longer. In the papers, it looks like he's negotiating an extension, so it's obviously in his head to keep going as long as he possibly can.
Well, and there isn't a debate about it. That's the reality. He's the best number 10 at the minute, but as you say, sport, as I know, it changes very quickly as well. So it's up to other people to try and contest him for that position.
How good is Harry Byrne?
It's a potential, isn't it? But potential doesn't do anything for you. The massive plus for him is that he's got a brilliant, I suppose, mentor in Felipe Contepomi. That mindset coupled with, I suppose, the what's the word? The constant, I suppose, demanding of a Stuart Lancaster. So the guy is really set up to succeed in his environment. It was disappointing when I think for everyone in Irish rugby when he got injured in the warm up. I don't recall which game it was, just before kickoff, and that would have. But we can't comment accurately because we haven't seen enough. And what you need. In this position, Jerry, is minutes in the saddle. That's what happens for out halves. The more you play, the better you get. And it's obviously kind of, years 28 to 32 is when you peak as an out half. So I know he's extremely highly rated, and he actually becomes, probably hugely important to Ireland's World Cup challenge.
That notion of having two 10s playing in the same team and finding a way to do it, it was the big existential question that Irish Rugby had to answer when Joey Carberry came on the scene, and it looked like they were doing everything they could to get him in. But it now appears as if we're going to have a number of 10s who are of fairly similar standards. So how do you find the time in a schedule when you're the head coach who now has to win games because of the way things have worked out to experiment? It's very difficult.
Well, that's it. That's the magic question. You've nailed it. That's the question. Wow, because you need short-term results, otherwise you lose your job, and that's So it's all great having this dreamy plan and outlook about how you want it to go, but the reality is that so do the Munster coaches, so do the Leinster coaches, the Connacht coaches. They need to pick what's best for now. The project of what's best for Ireland come World Cup time doesn't interest them, and that's the reality of sport. And there is a responsibility, obviously, to try and get these guys game time, and that's what the Pro 14 is meant to do. But putting them in a Pro 14 game and trying to put them out in Twickenham, it's like playing a complete different sport. It's of no relevance, so it doesn't work. So that's the conundrum facing Irish rugby at the minute.
There's obviously going to be a number of questions about who is beyond the next gen pick at out half, and as Ger alluded to there, the stack of players that Ireland has in that position is striking. You obviously have done a bit of work on Jack Crowley. You revealed last week that there was an effort trying to make a sign him. How high is this guy's ceiling from your point of view?
But sure, we don't know his limit, and he doesn't know his limit either, and Irish rugby doesn't know his limit. But I think you look at video footage, you talk to a lot of people, and you talk to the person involved, and that, I think, interestingly, gives you an appetite to kind of go cool off or go again. And with the engagement I have, I was desperate to get him. So, I was kind of all excited about the call on the Sunday night, thinking, there's absolutely no chance this guy's going to turn me down. And then bang. So it's absolute.
Like a teenager again.
Oh, what a defeat. It was crushing. So, I wanted him big time. And I was kind of thinking, it'd be really good for his development and it'd be really good for him in the now. But no, I didn't. My calling card wasn't strong enough, obviously. So that's back in my box.
That's unbelievably exciting for Munster and Ireland fans, Ronan, to hear that.
But sure, that's only my opinion, I suppose. Sure. And I'd like to think I have an eye for what's required in that position, but the most important thing, I think, is what's upstairs, mentally, what has he? And, obviously so much of this has to remain private, but this guy, I think, this guy has an awful lot of capacity, I think, physically, but more importantly, mentally, to succeed in a position where it'll be a roller coaster of emotions.
Right, that's I can see how Munster fans will get excited about that. Look, we're nearly completely out of time. What's going to happen when Munster face off against Leinster at the weekend?
Well, hopefully it's going to be a full-on game. We haven't had a full-on game for many number of years, and I think what is exciting is that you can see that the guys who are performing will get rewarded with a green jersey, because an awful lot of those jerseys are probably up for grabs, and that hasn't been the case for a long, long time, and it leads to an exciting time for them playing, obviously for in a Six Nations where it's never been so open with, I suppose, such turmoil in the world.
Munster slight favourites?
No, I don't. How can you say that? No. Like, Leinster champion team, Munster haven't been near their level in a long number of years. They've kicked on to a different, I suppose, stratosphere dimension in the last number of years, and they've been consistently better. I think what has changed in Munster would be, I think, their build-up from the outside looking in looks like they're setting themselves up to succeed this time. Other times you felt like they were setting themselves up to withhold the Leinster storming. So, should make for a great game.
Good stuff, Ronan. That was great. Thanks a million.
Great. Cheers, guys. Good to chat. Thanks.
You too. It's Ronan O'Gara giving us some very interesting insights into the roles of the 9 and 10. And I'd say making Munster fans very excited about that Crowley chat as well. So if you want to get in touch this morning, 087 9 180 180. Rob had asked there about what's the story with Jemison Gibson Park. He didn't make the list there at all, so I suspect it might have been something similar to the Conor Murray chat about maybe it was the age group, but we'll ask him again about that at some point in the future. So we'd ask you guys for your depth charts, and it was Murray, Cooney, Marmion, Blade, Next Gen Casey, that's Joshua. Stephen Cleary says Murray, Gibson Park, McGrath, Marmion. So not a whole heap for McGrath here. Patrick Foran says Murray, Cooney, Gibson Park, Casey. Didn't even get to chat about Casey, but Casey is a bit more of a petit general. Tyke Fanning says Casey is the future and present. Should be given a chance at number 9 right now. Need to give these young guys a go. That's the tension that we talked about there, though, that if you're the head coach, you're 9 and 10, or 2 kids who play brilliantly and you lose with a last minute penalty, and you lose again, and you lose again, but you play great, then the RFU get a bit worried because they're not making money and they sack you. In terms of the number 10 position, everybody's saying Sexton. So Sexton, Carberry, Burns, Byrne. That's Billy Burns and Ross Byrne. Can we rename those so that they all have different, slightly different names? Sexton, Carty, Madigan, Healy for 10, says Patrick Foran. And then are there any other ones here for 10? Sexton, Carty, Ross Byrne and Billy Burns, says Tommy O'Connor on Instagram as well. There's loads more of those coming in as well. You can check them out on our Instagram page. What do you think of that, Eoin?
I think that it's cause for excitement as a result of a lot of what he said there, and we're at that sweet spot now where enough of water has gone under the bridge after Ireland's last defeat in Test Rugby for us to start getting excited again.
Yep.
And for this sense of naivety. What are we, just over 2 years? We're almost at the middle, almost at the midpoint of the World Cup cycle. So it is about that time again for us to check our clocks and say, yep, we're going to do it. We're going to win a quarter-final.
It's the Men in Black thing that all sports fans have. No, what are you talking about? We got the best team in the world. No, that result never happened. No, it absolutely didn't happen. We've got the best young 8, 9 and 10 in the world. Who can stop us? The French. Yeah, don't worry about the French. Don't worry about the French. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I want to tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. Mick O'Connell at 80 is our 1 o'clock highlight. If you haven't heard that yet, and you've got to get on it because it's some top quality Mick O'Connell action as he whips myself and Joe. I think he called us young, which was very nice of him. It was a couple of years ago. I may still have been hanging on by my fingernails to my 30s, but I'm not anymore. State of the Union with Michael Cheika and Andrew Mertens at 3 o'clock. Our retro panel is How We Coach Kids at 4. That's a big topic that we're going to come back to on all of our channels next week. And then Wexford 56, that legendary team that won the All-Ireland. We talked to some of the stalwarts of that team. Liverpool against Burnley live on OTB Sports and on Off the Ball with Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr on commentary duty tonight. So that's the crack with that. John Duggan is with us at 8:39. John, good morning to you.
Ger and Owen, how are we all today?
Yeah, it was an interesting night's football, all told.
Yeah, I thought Pogba is back at World Cup level, isn't he, Paul Pogba? I like the fact that they played him centrally. He can obviously play with Bruno Fernandes in the same team. It's not going to be completely unworkable. And they came back well. They keep on coming back to win matches, Manchester United, and they've been brilliant on the road over the last year. 8 wins in the Premier League on the road now this season, and a 2-1 win over Fulham. I don't know if they're title winners, but they're definitely, I would say they've definitely improved under Solskjaer, and there's definitely a solidity to the team at the moment.
I would be getting out of all the cup competitions as soon as possible. I would be putting out the B team, the C team, the under 20, under 19s against Liverpool at the weekend. And when it comes to the Europa League, I would be like, look, this club has recently won the Europa League. It was great. Well done. Congratulations. You had a good night. But we have a chance of winning the league title this year. And if any of my best players get injured away in the round of last 16, they get a kick in the knee that prevents them from playing against Villa or Wolves and winning a match that's going to dictate whether or not we finish second, third or first, then no thanks, because this is it. This is our shot at clawing, at accelerating the process. A couple of seasons. Nobody thought Man United were going to be proper title contenders this year. And if they win the title this year, the boost that gives everybody, their mediocre players suddenly are title winners and they become emboldened. I'm like, get out of the cup competitions.
Imagine if... Sorry, John, I was just going to make the point. Imagine if Liverpool fans went into their first lockdown as runaway Premier League title winners and have been locked up for well over a year. And the first time they managed to smell that sweet air of freedom, Manchester United are Premier League champions. What a hellscape that is. They will be encouraging people to go back into lockdown immediately. It would be horrific. They didn't get their victory parade, and the next victory parade that happens as soon as enough vaccines are administered, it's actually happening in Manchester. That would be horrific, and I would actually feel sorry for Liverpool fans in that scenario.
Well, in 1998, Liverpool didn't really look like a team that were winning league titles. And when you think about the gap, it took Liverpool, Manchester United are now 8 years since their last title. So Liverpool took 30 years to win their title after 1990, and they went through a long period in the wilderness. And I was feeling that Manchester United were going to go through the same thing. But maybe we're in a different situation that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, if he wins the title, he will not be behind the wheel of a Mini. He'll be behind the wheel of one of those Terminator juggernauts from like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and he'll be just absolutely crushing everybody in his sight through the streets of Manchester.
Maximum Overdrive? Is that the movie you're talking about? Schwarzenegger wasn't in it, but the robots took over the world, and I remember a killer articulated lorry in particular.
Yeah, I don't remember that one, but I think the metaphor probably applies to Knight Rider or to Terminator or to Maximum Overdrive or any of these kind of things. And I get some sympathy from you there, Ger, as well about the FA Cup. That we all know that Spurs need to win a trophy, and maybe Manchester United not concentrating on that, as was the case 20 years ago with the Brazil trip, will allow Spurs to win that trophy under Jose and make everything very sweet again. Manchester City winning 2-0 against Aston Villa last night. What else is going on in the world? Well, Liverpool playing tonight. Joe Matip possibly back for the game against Burnley, which kicks off at 8. Liverpool without a win now in 4 Premier League matches. Celtic drawing 2-2 with Livingston. Their season is up in smoke, and that's just another example of it. Rory McIlroy doing well at the golf, 3 under par through 8 holes, tied for the lead of the Abu Dhabi Championship on day 1. He's been second there 4 times in his career. Laurie Cantor and Roman Langosk also on 8 under par. Padraig Harrington is even par for his round, playing the 8th hole. Shane Lowry and Graham McDowell tee off just about after 11 o'clock Irish time. The Grand National winning jockey David Mullins hanging up his silks, retiring from jumps racing at the age of 24. His heart was not in it. A very candid interview he did with the Racing Post this morning. He rode Rule the World to win the Grand National at Aintree in 2016 at the age of just 19. Just felt his heart wasn't in it and wants to now go and concentrate on buying and selling horses. Afghanistan were 159 for 4 a short time ago against Ireland in that one-day international in Abu Dhabi. They've got 20 overs to go. The match is part of the ICC's World Cup Super League, lads.
Sorry, I'm just reading here. So, Ebony Marinoff's appeal for the high tackle on Breed Stack has just been adjourned in Adelaide until next Thursday. This is coming from Patrick Mulcahy on Twitter at @PaMulSport. And so she was handed a 3-match ban for the tackle on Breed Stack. And look, from the angle that we could all see, it looked very innocuous. It's only a 9-game season, so that would be 1/3 of the entire season gone. So they've appealed that. and we won't find out until next Thursday whether or not that ban is upheld. So, but the good news from all of that, of course, is that Breed Stack was pictured on the beach with their thumbs up in a neck brace, and obviously quite sore, but on the road to recovery. So, John, there's a big story, another big story in racing that we need to talk about. One of the young Mullins jockeys who we'd been talking about recently on the show as like, next in line to be part of that dynasty that was going to go on to become an absolutely sensational jockey at just the age of 24. David Mullins has retired.
Yeah, this was surprising. David Mullins is a bloody good jockey. And I remember there was a race, he was quite original in his tactics. There was a race on Fahey in a champion stayers race at Punchestown over hurdles. And he just stole it from the front. He stole a race from Ken Boyd the front in a Christmas race, the Lexus Chase there. And I do have vivid memories and bad memories of Rule of the World personally, because I remember that year in 2016 giving somebody in the office 2 horses for the Grand National. Then I went off Rule of the World because Rule of the World had never won a race over fences, which is utterly bizarre when a horse turns up at the Grand National. But he gave him a really, really patient ride that day in really mucky conditions at Aintree. And then 2 fences out, he realises when Davy Russell says, "Go, Davy, go," that he's going to win the Grand National. And he just timed his run to perfection. And it was just a great day for David Mullins and the Mullins family. His dad, Thom. I remember his brother was crying. And I remember Mes Morris had trained the winner of the Irish Grand National that year. And then like buses, they come one after the other. Then the English Grand National, you could see Mes Morris just absolutely in bits watching the race. And David Mullins just covered, caked in mud as he crossed the line. That euphoric moment when he just lifted his whip and like you could just see it even in the images I was putting up for the site today in the article, how much it meant. And then a couple of years later, when Tiger Roll won the Grand National for the second time, David Mullins was beaten about, I think it was actually the first time, he was beaten that much on Pleasant Company. And you could see then the other side of the game, the absolute anguish and pain to lose the Grand National by a whisker. Just some of the quotes in the Racing Post article. The bad times definitely outweighed the good. There were times I might ride a winner, but I would come home depressed because the other 3 didn't win. When you leave school at 16, you feel trapped into being a jockey. It's relentless. There's no break. You're always on call. If you decide not to go to Sligo for one ride on a 33-1 shot, you're called a lazy whatever for not going up and getting off your backside and going. And I've been called out many times for disagreements with my agent over it. He'd get annoyed, I suppose. I can see where he's coming from. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to Sligo or Ballinrobe or anywhere for one ride, but I've done it myself over the years. But I just found that as a jockey, you're always on call. You never got a break. I've been trying to figure out loads of different things to do. But when you're in the bubble, it can be very hard to think outside of that bubble. He's been on the go since he was 16 years of age. And also, he's not Willie Mullins' top jockey. Paul Townend is as well.
Yeah. All right, John, we'll come back to that a little bit later on with Thom Malone. Good stuff, though. Thanks a million.
Okay.
We'll have Thom with us in a new slot, counting down to Cheltenham after 9 o'clock this morning. I'm going to talk to Cian Fahey in just a moment about the weekend's NFL. A reminder, OTB AM is live every morning from 7:30 to 10. If you miss it, though, you can catch us back on the podcast. Huge numbers listening to our podcast every morning. You can subscribe on the OTB Sports app. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button and it'll download for you. We timestamp it as well, so if there's bits of it that you don't want, if you want to skip past me and just listen to Eoin, you can do that. It's all free, gratis, and for nothing as well. Right, Cian Fahey, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. We're all waking up to the devastating news that Philip Rivers is retiring, even though we all knew it was coming. Well,
so Philip Rivers is gone, and it looks like Drew Brees is gone, and that class of quarterbacks, that old group of quarterbacks, with the exception, obviously, of the ageless one in Tom Brady, he's still going. Do you think Tom Brady's going to do another year after this, or does it depend on what happens over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, they're not even asking him if he's going to retire. The weird thing about Philip Rivers and Drew Brees is obviously Rivers replaced Brees and they're retiring at the same time while Brees is much older. But the other part of it that's really weird is Drew Brees is like very clearly better than Philip Rivers over the course of his career, or at least had a better career. But Philip Rivers is far more interesting, and we miss Philip Rivers far more than we will Drew Brees, just because of the way he played and kind of the character he was. Like Drew Brees is very, very boring in the sense that the way he played was very precise and very touch throws all the time, and he always got to the open receiver. And it's kind of why you saw him drop off so much in later years, in the later part of the season, because when his arm strength went, it affected every other part of his game, whereas Rivers is probably better at sustaining his play over the course of the season without any ability to throw.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Brady there, because we brought him up. So your contention this weekend is that his running backs, so if people are watching this and his running backs aren't doing well, then he's going to be in trouble.
Well, yeah, it's not. It's partly Brady. Like Breeze and Brady last week combined for about 6 or 7 interceptions. Breeze was just unlucky that his were caught and Brady's weren't. Brady's not playing particularly well, and like this isn't the first time Brady's gone through a playoff season without or playoff run without playing particularly well. And sometimes he's actually won the Super Bowl that way. When he beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs 2 years ago, whatever it is now. They did so by running the ball primarily and by Brady getting them into the right running play and maintaining the clock. Obviously, he's not playing Mahomes this time. He's playing Aaron Rodgers. And the Packers' offense is nowhere near as good as what that Chiefs' offense was, but it's still a very good offense. And the Buccaneers have already beaten the Packers pretty badly, but the Packers' main problem this year didn't actually show up in that game. Their main problem this year has been stopping the run for a couple of years now. It's been that way. And if you look at the Minnesota Vikings game, Dalvin Cook really carried them through that game by just giving him the ball over and over and over again. The Buccaneers don't have that quality of running back. They have Leonard Fournette, who they're going to rely on heavily, but they do have Ronald Jones, who's an outstanding player. And if he gets the ball more, he will exploit that defense and really attack the weak spot of it. I think you'll probably see Fournette have some success as well. But Fournette is a lot easier for the Packers defense to react to because he's more of a predictable player, especially when you consider Antonio Brown is now out, looks like he's going to be out or at least limited when he plays as well. And the relationship with Mike Evans clearly isn't there despite the touchdown last week. That has not developed over the course of the season. Chris Godwin, you think, should have been better as well. But then you're playing into the Packers' strengths if you want Brady to throw the ball a lot. It's going to be a lot of running and a lot of hoping the defense wins the game the same way it did in the regular season. It's
8:05 kickoff on Sunday evening for the Packers against the Buccaneers. So this is obviously potentially the two most talented quarterbacks, two greatest quarterbacks, certainly of their generation. Aaron Rodgers needs a second Super Bowl, though, to cement his greatness. With most people who have these arguments about, is he really great? Yeah, he only won one Super Bowl. I mean, he is great, but actually, this is his time and this is his moment to win his second Super Bowl because the fates have conspired for him to be performing as well as he is, to be fit, and to have 2 games left to go. This is his moment, right?
It's definitely a moment he kind of needs in that sense. Like he's very much the Lionel Messi of the NFL, where he's very clearly, like, until Patrick Mahomes plays another 5 or 6 years and can establish himself over that longevity, Rodgers is very much the best player the league has ever seen. But people say he hasn't won enough, and Brady won so much more. And like the reason for that is Mike McCarthy. He never had a great coach. He never had a great opportunity to control games and win. Like, he's never really been the reason that they've lost in the playoffs, which is a startling thing to say. But if you go through his career, he's rarely had an actual bad game in the playoffs. So now he's had a much better coach with him and Matt LaFleur. But the one limitation they have, or the two limitations they have, is the one we just talked about on defense, where the Buccaneers are going to be able to run the ball. And then offensively, they drafted a quarterback in the offseason, and it's being credited as, he just lit a fire under Rodgers. And maybe it did, and it got the best out of Rodgers. But they have such a limited receiving core that's going to be an issue if Davante Adams doesn't show up. The reality is Davante Adams probably will show up. He didn't in the regular season. But in last week when he was going against Jalen Ramsey, and all the talk was, will Ramsey shut him down and force the offense to go elsewhere, and then they'll struggle? And that didn't really happen, even though Lazard had a massive drop down the field, because Adams was still able to get open. So as long as Adams can get open, as long as the running game is functioning the way it has, this should be a winnable game. And if Rodgers wins this game, I just hope that we get him versus the Chiefs, because that would be great Hall of Fame quarterback against incoming great Hall of Fame quarterback.
It sounds like you're willing to write off what happened in Week 6, Cian, that was a mere footnote on this Packers storming to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, okay. In the context of this season, you have to say that's a complete and utter outlier. Because outside of that game, the Packers have been outstanding, and Rodgers specifically has been incredible. And there were a couple of big moments early in that game that kind of turned, and then it just kind of snowballed. But if you actually look at the larger context of the last couple of years, we probably shouldn't ignore that game, because the Packers have had real struggles against good teams. And we saw just last year, the 49ers dominated them in the regular season to a greater degree than the Buccaneers did this year. And then in the playoffs, we kind of expected it to be a little bit closer, a little bit more of a bite. And it really wasn't. They were able to destroy the Packers again. So it's very possible that we come back next week and we come back ahead of the Super Bowl and we go, the Packers got blown out again. But it does feel like these two teams went in different directions after that game. So I'm more likely to point to the Packers, and they're at home. It's going to be probably quite cold, so which will affect Brady a lot more than it will affect Rodgers, which should be a big detail.
Let's talk a little bit about the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was in the concussion protocol, is in the concussion protocol. It sounds like they're leaning towards him playing. Do you expect him to play or not?
I 100% expect him to play, but it's with a concussion protocol, it's the one thing where you would say, like, besides a completely devastating injury, it's the one thing where you would say he might actually be forced to not play. When you talk about the NFL and these kind of things, it tends to work out. I think that's probably the best way to say it for the stars in the league. And we already see that he's listed as a full participant in practice on Wednesday. And then afterwards, they changed that and said, no, actually, he was limited. And that's likely something to do with their protocols and to do with him getting too far ahead in that concussion, being allowed to do more than he should have been allowed to do. But the other aspect of it is Mahomes fully healthy means the Chiefs against the Bills would be a very easy game for the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs at their worst, or at their inconsistent worst this season, the worst game they played this season, is probably better than the Bills' best game this season. But since Mahomes has this concussion, and not only that, he injured his foot early in the game last week as well, which is being overlooked a little bit. Since he has these handful of injuries, actually bring that game down to be a little bit more competitive. It still feels like the Chiefs are a far better team. And even if Mahomes doesn't play this weekend and Andy Reid is forced to work with Chad Henne, I still think there's a chance that the Chiefs win the game, which is telling you just how good Andy Reid is, but it's also telling you the level of talent on the Chiefs relative to the level of talent on the Bills. So you expect the Chiefs to win this game? Oh, 100%. I are far more confident in the Chiefs when Mahomes is playing. I've said it all year long. I don't think they've consistently played well, but whenever they've needed to play well, they've played well. And they last week, I guess, prior to Mahomes' injury, they were putting together a full performance where they had played well from start to finish. I'm saying finish is Mahomes going off the field. And when Henne came in, it all changed a little bit. But that was actually quite rare for them this year. The only time they really put together a great 4 quarters was against the Ravens early in the year, when the Ravens, before everyone got hurt in the Ravens, and they absolutely destroyed that team. They've sleptwalked through the rest of the year, including a game against the Bills, and they've still won most of their games because Mahomes can just turn it on when he needs to, and the offense is ludicrously talented. Travis Kelce is establishing himself and clearly defining himself as the best tight end in football. We should no longer be putting him next to George Kittle and arguing the two together. Kelce is just on another level. I'm not sure which broadcasters have which game this weekend, but it's probably best for the livelihoods of people surrounding Tony Romo that Patrick Mahomes does play. Like, is the guy going to self-combust if Henne completes another pass? That is the big concern I would have about this weekend. My favourite part of Tony Romo's career was his very first game when he was doing Packers and Bengals, and Andy Dalton dropped back in the pocket and Tony literally started screaming, "What are you doing? What are you doing? There's a guy wide open. What are you doing? Throw the ball." And very clearly they went to an ad break and someone came into his ear and said, "Tony, you need to be more positive about these guys." And he's taken that to a complete other level where he just talks them all up. So you just have to kind of take the good with the bad with him right now. He's still for me, the best commentator in the game. If you could somehow put Gary Neville in the studio and Tony Romo on commentary for whatever event that would be, it would be perfect. All right, good stuff, Cian. Thanks a million. Thanks, guys. Cian Fahey giving us his thoughts there ahead of what you should be watching this weekend when it comes to the NFL. That early game, obviously, kicking off at 8:05 is the Packers and the Buccaneers, and then it's the Chiefs and the Bills at 20 to midnight on Sunday. So it'll be early Monday before that one finishes, and we'll obviously talk about it here on Monday morning on OTB AM. Right, what are we at? 8:58 this morning. Before 10 o'clock, we're going to hear from Paula Donovan, who is in brilliant form, talking with Joe. Sue Murphy's going to give us her TV recommendations. But up next, a new slot for us. It's our Cheltenham countdown with 8 weeks to go. Thom Malone is going to kick it off. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
Ronnie Whelan could play, by the way. And let me tell you, talk about people being dirty when you could tackle. He was filthy.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Dear me.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app. OTB.
Don't shoot. Oh, he dinged it. Oh! It's a goal! It's a goal! The 6-1. What a ball! I think. 15 seconds left. That is amazing.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
It is 8:59 this morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Now, Thom Malone is with us. Thom, good morning to you.
Hey, Ger, how are you? You well?
Yeah, good. We're going to start our Cheltenham countdown. Before we do, we should talk about David Mullins. This is very surprising, I suspect, but when you read the comments in the interview that he gave to the Racing Post, you get the sense of somebody who really did not enjoy being a high-profile jockey.
Yeah, you really get that from him, don't you? And he is the young man who enjoyed great success at a very young age as well. I mean, he won that entry Grand National age just 19, and I think I'm just looking through some of the quotes last night, he was beaten in the Grand National the first year at Tiger Road. He wasn't beaten far on Pleasant Company, finished second. And immediately after the race, he was asked, how are you feeling? He said, well, I was immediately gutted, but David Russell's 38 and that's his first Grand National. And I won at 19. So perhaps that kind of gave a slight insight into how, you know, early success can blunt a little bit of hunger. And he definitely spoke about how he wasn't enjoying it anymore. And like, he's a 9-time Grade 1 winner. For his age is a phenomenal achievement. He's obviously a very talented rider. There was a time when he was doing the kind of Ruby Walsh thing where you trek over and back to the UK and ride in the big races on Saturday and have that kind of life. And, you know, that's just not a runner anymore, obviously with COVID and the like. And yeah, it just sounds like a real lack of motivation. He's been speaking for quite a long time. He said he's been thinking about it for quite a long time. He referenced the Galway Festival the year before last as not enjoying it since then. He's been trying to get out since. So I wish him all the best, but it's just incredible to think he's that level of talent. He's already had incredible success. Thinking of riding Kenboy a couple of years ago at the Dublin Racing Festival, he just picked it up early and made every yard in a top class Grade 1. So he's always had the talent, and you know, he spoke about how hard it is being a jockey, and I can't help but think how difficult it must be when you're that age, and maybe you're not getting those top rides anymore, and you know, to just put your head down and grind and ride bad, or like you do have to ride bad horses. That's just the kind of fact of life. There's only a handful of Grade 1s, there's only a handful of rides available in them, and you know, if you don't have a top job, you don't get on the top horses, and you just have to put your head down and work. It kind of reminds you of the Brian Cooper situation a few years ago when he lost the Jiggins 10 gig, and he has had success since. And you just think with David, you know, he's definitely had his head turned. He doesn't feel like he wants to be a jockey anymore, which is completely fine. It is a very, very tough life. He's also had some horrific injuries. You know, and I remember after he had his last fall where he was airlifted from the hospital with a spinal fracture, you know, coming back from that, that's definitely going to temper things.
100%. Well. So look, we'll continue to talk about that, I'm sure, on OTBSports.com. But let's talk about your new column, which is a countdown to Cheltenham over the next 8 weeks. We're starting with the novice chasers, I think, where Envoy LN, Shishkin, and Monkfish are the three that are heading the markets. Thom, how are you doing this? Are you looking at individual horses? Are you looking at races? What's your modus operandi for the next 8 weeks?
Well, for the next couple of weeks, I figured, like, especially with horses like the novice chases, they're all multiple entered. So, you know, Envoy LN, even though he's highly likely to run in the Marsh, he is entered in the Arkle and also what was formerly known as the RSA, the festival chase or whatever it's called now. But so I figured we'll take the big races on their own. So the Gold Cups, the Champion Hurdles and the like, they'll be on their own, and then the novice hurdles and the novice chases will take as a group. So that's the way I figured we would take it. So
is this too early or too late to be making anti-post bets?
I personally think, particularly with the likes of Shishkin, Envoy LN and Monkfish, you have probably missed the boat a little bit. You know, it's actually a very strange situation here, because you have last year's winner of the Supreme Novices Hurdle, Shishkin, is going for the Arkle. Last year's winner of the Ballymore Properties Novices Hurdle is going for the Marsh, and last year's winner of the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle going straight into Novice Chase, the old RSA, the festival chase. So that's kind of unprecedented that none of those big winners would go on and consider a hurdling career or even a couple of years over hurdles. So yeah, these three are But they are potential superstars. So just trying to look through these markets and see if there are little bits and pieces elsewhere where you can, maybe find a slight value angle. But, if you haven't already done the kind of Shishkin, Monkfish, MVLN treble, you've probably missed the boat a little bit price-wise. But, non-winner, no bet has come into proceedings now, which obviously means if the horses don't run, you get your money back. And Paddy Power and Betfair have done that. The others will all follow suit. One other angle here is that I've noticed that MVLN is even money, so he's not odds on with two English firms. So again, there is that slight talking point that MVLN is just a kind of Irish talking horse, even though obviously he won the Ballymore last year, and that perhaps there is something lurking in the UK that can beat him, but that is not immediately obvious.
Okay, so they think that there might be something there, and that's why they're offering that slightly bigger price than the Irish bookmakers. So you're parsing the rest of the field. Is it that? I suppose that's the question as well. If you're finding value now's not a bad time. If there's no run or no bet, it's safe to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a couple there in the Arkle. I think there's probably more opposition potentially to Shishkin at this stage than there is perhaps to MVLN. I really think MVLN is going to scare off a lot of people. And as kind of mentioned in the columns, I really like the look of Darver Star. Trained by Gavin Cromwell. He finished second behind Franco de Port at Lepersen in the Grade 1 last time out. Look, you kind of can't really... The other thing about this, while I am suggesting horses that are bigger prices, you cannot get away from how good these three particular favourites are. Shishkin, absolutely flawless over hurdles, 2 out of 2 over fences, MVLN 11 out of 11, and Monkfish has just turned into an absolute monster since he sort of got the hang of hurdling at the back end of last year, and now looks spot on over fences as well. So they are three really, really good horses. But look, at this time of the year, and things are a little bit tight in January, so you want a little bit more value for your money, don't you?
So these are each way longer prices that you're recommending in the column.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Energamine of Willie Mullins against Shishkin in the Arkle. He was a really, really impressive winner at Naas last time out, got the better at Captain Guinness. Again, with Willie Mullins, all his horses are multiple entered across the kind of novice sphere. So even the likes of Asterion Forlange, who fell, we saw last weekend against MVLN, he is entered in everything. He's entered in the Arkle over 2 miles. He's also entered in the National Hunt Chase over 4 miles. So they kind of still don't really know where they are with him. But I would think that Energamine looks like the most likely Willie Mullins horse to take on Shishkin. He's currently available at 6-1. And that looks... I like the look of him. He had all the clock watchers really, really happy with his performance at Naas last time out. So I'd say maybe Energamine and also Darver Star, who of course is third in the champion hurdle. He just has that little bit of perhaps toughness about him. I thought the way he ran at Leopardstown the last time behind Franco de Port, he was just ridden a little inefficiently. Perhaps Johnny Moore, I'd say if he thought about it again, he might just hold on to Darver Star a little bit. They thought about going, I know there's talk from going up in distance at Cheltenham, but again, look, you go up in distance, you have to take on MVLN, whereas, I don't know, look, Shishkin obviously has done nothing wrong, but maybe taking him on slightly less of a concern. Also, we will have a ferocious pace in the Arkle. A horse of Dan Skelton's called All Mankind. He only knows one way to go. So that could actually suit Darver Star because he might be able to just get in and get a toe. Then again, it will also suit Shishkin. But there's 33-1 available about Darver Star, who was, placed in a champion hurdle last year. So he has good festival form. So, at that kind of price, I mean, it's much less than that non-runner, no bet. But I think Darver Star definitely has a squeak against Shishkin in that in the Arkle.
All right, and you've also had a look at the Novices Chase, Cheltenham Festival Novices Chase.
Yeah, look, this is Monkfish's, and I can't really look past Monkfish in this one, to be honest, because of these, he's obviously one of the bigger price on Wednesday of the sort of, of these favourites. He was like, he's 2-1 available, whereas the other two are odds on. So I actually really love Monkfish, and we did a Cheltenham preview of sorts earlier on, and he was touted by Patrick Mullins the day after he did his first schooling session as the most exciting novice chaser they have. So really can't get away from him. You look through it then, latest exhibition, Monkfish has beaten him both times so far. I would say the likes of Next Destination and Pencilful Lead are the ones who could really put it up to him, because I mean, down beyond those, it's very difficult to make much of a case as yet, unless something comes out and does something magical, maybe in the flow gas at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival.
Okay. My memory of these very short prices horses in Cheltenham is that regularly they get overturned.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I wouldn't be piling in on any of these.
Well, that's very true. And Envoy Len, the problem for Envoy Len, as if you're looking at him here at the moment, where he's a general 4 to 5 shot, and as I said, there's one British bookmaker going evens. Beyond Envoy Len, it's 10 to 1 the field. There has to be, and look, one horse I absolutely love against Envoy Len is Shan Blue. He was a brilliant winner at Kempton at Christmas. That was over 3 miles. He'll drop back and trip. He absolutely went a million out in front, and a horse tried to go with him for the first mile and a half. He burned him off, and then the big breakaway came to go at him and just couldn't lay a hand on him at all. So Shan Blue is a horse, again trained by Dan Skelton. He's 14 to 1 and has won against Envoy Len. And again, talk about Willie Mullins and everything is multiple entries and everything is multiple targets. That's not the case with Shan Bleu. And, as the each way pots go against these hot pot favourites, I think Shan Bleu definitely marks as one of the better value. Again, you don't have to take down runner bet. You can get 14 to 1 just straight now. But like I said, he only has one entry, whereas all the others have multiple entries. So we know he's going for this race. He won over 3 miles last time out, so we know he has stamina. His jumping is absolutely impeccable because he's trained by Dan Skelton, who's the son of Olympic gold medal winning show jumper Nick Skelton. And he jumps quick and fast, and he will provide Envoy Len with a test that he hasn't experienced so far over fences.
Okay, these novice chasers, where did these horses end up? So, like next year when we're watching Cheltenham and we're hearing Envoy Len, Shishkin and Monkfish, are they all in races that are of different lengths, and so therefore they'll end up in different, when they mature, they'll end up in different races as well? Or are they all ultimately trying to become Gold Cup horses?
Well, a lot of these horses come from the point-to-point sphere, and they would be those kind of big money buys that we hear about, that ultimately these big connections look to buy to become their Gold Cup horse. So that's certainly the case with Envoy Len, who costs over 300,000, Monkfish another big price. So the likes of Envoy Len and Monkfish next year, hopefully, will be going for a Gold Cup. You would think Shishkin will stay at the 2 mile trip for the moment, and then he would hopefully become a champion chase horse, as has been the case with Nicky Henderson horses, the likes of Sprinter Sacre and Altior that he's had in the past. But yeah, next year it's incredibly exciting because he's going to get a proper test when he comes out into open company. You look at the races that Envoy Len has run so far in his life and how straightforward they've been for him, particularly over fences. Whereas like next year, he'll probably start out up the north in that Grade 1 in Down Royal, where he will have to take on potentially, his stablemate Delta Work as a previous Grade 1 winner, the likes of Ken Boy. He'll have to come to Leopardstown at Christmas and maybe compete like in that race at Christmas that Applitar won. He's going to have to take on the likes of Applitar, Manila Indo. Like it's senior hurling next year for Envoy Len. And like I said, if they want him to become a Gold Cup horse, he's going to have to take them on next year. But yeah, Envoy Len, Monkfish most likely to end up in the Gold Cup. And you'd imagine Shishkin will hopefully become a champion chase horse. Okay, Tom, before we go, we should talk about the big story in racing this week, and that's the 6-month ban for Charles Burns. Today in the papers, Michael Verney has talked to Ted Walsh, who's saying, look, racing does have integrity. And it seems from the outside, having watched a lot of people in racing speak about racing and how passionate they are about it, that people need to come out and rally around the sport now, because it's a dangerous moment where you either win the public back or they kind of shrug their shoulders, and you can't really as a sport allow the general public to shrug their shoulders and imply that this is something that is happening widespread. It's important that the leaders of racing stand up is my point in summary, really. Yeah, absolutely. Look, from every angle, this looks terrible. It's a welfare issue. It's an integrity issue. And, and then it looks lenient. Like, oh, yes, it cannot be proven that the trainer administered these. It cannot be proven. That's fine. But the horse was drugged and he was laid, and he is the responsibility of Charles Burns. And that just looks, it's just so bad. And the problem here is, obviously the turf club's hands are tied slightly, or the IHRB's hands are tied slightly. They can't comment on the case. And, if you saw the interview with Dennis Egan over Christmas, Hugh Cahill was excellent with him. He dragged him over the coals a little bit. But, Dennis Egan was a little backward about coming forward. He can't talk, we can't talk about individual cases. Now, everyone's read this report from the IHRB where, they gave out the details step by step. As Richie Forrestal said, that's not always the case. I mean, you regularly get sent these emails when things happen with trainers and they get, light bans and, light sentences, and you're wondering why is this so lacking in detail? So I'm just hopeful that this is a real moment for the IHRB in particular in the way they communicate to the press and the public, and just making sure that, their reasonings for all these decisions are just so much more concrete. Because, like I say, to any outsider, 6 months for that offence, in any other sports, like how
it would be
things are administered is irrelevant, because you are responsible for whatever's administered to the athlete's body. So how it got in is kind of irrelevant if it was any other sport, and that's the real bad.
One last thing that did come up was the absence of CCTV from a lot of these yards. As I was making the point, technology is much cheaper these days. You could have CCTV installed in these racetracks, or you could put a program in place to say we're going to do that. That would be one step that they could all take.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tramore has since put CCTV in. So, I mean, that has happened since. This could, so in a purely hypothetical situation, I mean, that really won't change anything, because, the horses arrive in horse boxes.
Sure.
So it can happen before they arrive at the track. It's not necessary. I mean, the real issue for me here is the welfare issue. There was the welfare of the horse and the welfare of the jockey. That horse had an horrifically dangerous levels of that drug in his body. I mean, I work with horses pretty much every day. You wouldn't even pull it out of the stable if it had that much sedative in it. And to think it went to the track is horrific.
Yeah. Thom, good stuff. Thanks a million. You can read Thom's column and his advice over the next 8 weeks on the OTB Sports app. It'll publish every Wednesday, and we'll talk to him every Thursday as well about that. Check it out, otbsports.com. Thom will be back next Thursday at 9 o'clock as well. So Ronan Fagan says, why don't you discuss the possibility of Leicester winning the title? This perennial focus on Man United doing so is gone beyond boring now. Hashtag OTB AM. Here at Off the Ball. Okay, we will. We'll do Leicester. We'll talk all about Leicester next week, because they have got our attention. And we owe James Maddison an apology. We'll do that next week as well. Brian Dillon says, Pogba just putting himself in the shop window for the summer. Ole knows that and is okay with it if it means he gets a run of form from him for United to finish in the top 4. That's an excellent point that I think is probably a little bit, the selfishness. It suits everybody for him to play well. And I would definitely cash in on him if you can find a buyer to pay the money that Manchester United believe they need in the summer. And Kieran Lenihan says, hands off young Crowley, ROG. Ronan got very excited about young Crowley.
He did, and as a result, everybody else is very excited as well. So it's a bit contagious, I think, that level of excitement.
Yeah, that's just my opinion. Yeah, but you've got a fairly well qualified opinion, and you know your Munster 10s, and you know the crack with that. So we're willing to take that opinion, and we're going to run with it. That's how we're taking that. We're going to hear from hopefully one of our gold medal prospects around about 9:30 this morning when we talk rowing. But now at 18 minutes past 9, we're going to get into some TV. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Owen, what have you been watching over the last couple of weeks?
I'm still stuck in my never-ending loop of The Sopranos and lots of Premier League football. That's
what's happening in The Sopranos at the moment? Give me a...
I've just started season 6, the final season, a couple of episodes in, and since I've been last talking to you, I finished off season 5, which is extraordinary. It is the best part of the entire TV show to date, and the start of season 6, episode 1, is just absolutely incredible as well. So the second last episode of season 5 and the first episode of season 6, I would say, are 2 of the best episodes I've seen in the entire series so far. But as we discussed last week, will the early seasons have more of an impact on me on the rewatch. Once you start to get to know the intricacies of the characters, I've got a feeling that there's a lot more content in the first couple of series that went underappreciated from my point of view because it was my first time watching it.
The rewatch is a joy, but the podcast series, once you know what happens in the end as well, or how everything unfolds, is also quite a joy that unfolds slowly. I got a text from Eoin at 10:30 on Saturday morning. Jesus effing Christ!
Spoiler.
The way they kill off whoever in The Sopranos. 10:30 in the Saturday morning, you're like, I have to get up and watch this. Normally it's like 4 in the morning you're watching this stuff, but you're like, no, I'm going to bed, so I've got a clear mind, so I can watch them kill off my favourite characters.
Well, this is a very important conversation, and I've got into debates with my friends about this before. When is the best time to actually watch television and watch movies? I would say it is first thing in the morning. You and I don't have a bad bio clock. We do this thing every single morning of the week. So come Saturday, you're up at 8 or 9 as long as you're not out on a Friday night. Nobody's out on a Friday night at the moment. So I'm up at 8 or 9 on a Saturday morning anyway. So what are you going to do? You're going to throw on The Sopranos or whatever you're watching. You're going to throw on a movie and watch it first thing in the morning. I watched Parasite first thing in the morning last year, and it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. Watch your culture first thing in the morning, guys. You're never going to regret it.
Sue Murphy, good morning to you.
Hi, how are you?
When do you watch your culture?
When I'm awake, I suppose in the evening, because when you've a 1-year-old running around the house all day, you can't really watch something. I try to do that, but it's impossible. So once she goes down, I actually set up a TV in the kitchen a couple of months ago because I was like, I can't do this anymore. So there's one in the kitchen, there's one in the sitting room, there's one upstairs, and there's one in the back room. So I watch TV in pretty much every room.
What?
But yeah.
What?
Yeah, but it's part of my job. Like, a lot of my job is like watching new series, and if I don't know what I'm talking about, then it's not worth doing it. So I'd set up TV basically anywhere I can watch it. So
right.
I can watch as much as I can.
You would understand my point of view here perfectly, Sue. It is literally part of your job to pay attention to what you're watching. You don't see, of course, you see it as a form of relaxation, sure, but you see it as a professional facet of your very being. And do you not work best in the morning? Do you not wake up and use all your senses to enjoy and be fully tuned into what you're watching, no?
Yeah. Again, when you've a 1-year-old at 5:30 in the morning, it's that's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Excuses.
And do you get dressed on the Saturdays where you get up and watch The Sopranos at 10 o'clock in the morning? 9:30 it must be, because, you know, she only dies at the end.
Yeah, sometimes actually. Yeah. Like
good spoiler.
Good spoiler there, right? Yeah, sometimes it depends. Like maybe I might be going for a run afterwards, so I might put on a pair of shorts. Maybe I could be ready to go somewhere. Or if not, yeah, I would probably get dressed. I might even put on a pair of shoes to watch an episode of The Sopranos.
I feel like
why
we
not?
know too much about Owen.
No, look, this is important. This is how you find out about people. Look, I actually think that it's okay to have spoilers about something that finished 13 years ago. You're in the middle of it, so I'm not going to give you any right now. But it's okay for us to say what happened in something that finished 13 years ago. That's legit. No?
It's legit for you because you've seen it. If I spoiled it for you, you go absolutely demented.
I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. You can spoil The Crown, no problems. I haven't seen it.
Well, I think we need a moratorium on spoilers until everybody's vaccinated, is my point, because a lot of people are watching back old stuff. And I think once you get vaccinated, then we should be back in the sphere of, okay, there's a statute limitations on spoilers, I think. But right now, no, spoilers are off the table, in my opinion.
Okay. Some breaking news. Michael Dara-McCauley has just retired. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show.
Every time I log into this, is another person who's retired from Dublin.
It's retirement season. It's Dubs' retirement season this week, last week, and I think next week as well. There'll be some more as well. So, Sue, what are we watching?
WandaVision. And I came across, I actually didn't hear much about this because it was kind of touted around. When you go to the Disney, what they tell you is everything that's coming up for the next couple of years. They kind of say we have this, and I felt like everything was gone because of COVID. So they weren't going to do all of these massive films. Some of their, like the Black Panther, was put off because of what happened. Like a lot of things just went by the wayside. WandaVision was one of those things that I thought was going to disappear, and then suddenly it was out. And they released it last Friday. They have 2 episodes every 2 weeks, and it follows 2 of the characters from the Avengers. If you're put off by superhero movies, don't be put off by this, because it's not it's not like you have to watch 23 Avengers films to understand what's happening. It's nothing like that. It's kind of like a nod to the old 1950s, 1960s sitcoms. So there's 9 episodes. The first one was a kind of a I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke kind of thing. Now the second one was Bewitched. I mean, even the starting credits are amazing. I grew up with Bewitched. I absolutely love it. So it's kind of a nod to that. But in the background,
reruns of Bewitched. You grew up with reruns of Bewitched.
Yeah, reruns.
Yeah,
I thought you meant the 90s.
Wasn't it made in the 50s?
The 90s band.
Oh my God, yeah, it was 50s, yeah. Those, and they went into 60s, yeah. But no, I definitely wasn't watching the original. It was reruns. But we had 2 stations when I was younger, so it was the only thing that was on. But yeah, it's that kind of nod to 1950s, 1960s sitcom. So it's really weird when you're watching it first. It takes a long time to climatize the first episode because you have no idea what's going on. But something bad is happening in the background and you kind of see flashes of colour because it's shot in black and white. And then there's this weird symbol that comes up every now and again, which I'm sure Marvel and Avengers fans will be able to tell you more about. But it's very interesting. Like, I couldn't stop watching it. And I went into the second episode and couldn't wait for I looked up the third one straight away. So I think it's going to have a broader appeal than just being a superhero thing, but also stick with it because it's not what it seems, if you know what I mean.
Go on.
Well, it seems that in most superhero products that we have, it's usually generally a young single male. This is a married couple. I'm speaking to 2 married people at the moment. Does this fill you with joy to see finally you've been put on the front foot in a superhero television show?
To be fair as well, this isn't a spoiler. Well, it is a spoiler. If you've seen the Avenger film, Vision's dead. So it's you kind of get the feeling this is coming from Wanda's point of view. So it is actually, which I feel is kind of becoming a thing now. It's like, how do we make all the female superheroes? Because they promised that the Black Widow film is coming as well. So he's very much in the background. It doesn't feel like, even though he's part of the married couple, it's very much happening to her as opposed to him. So
you just given a spoiler for something that's actually current that there's only been 2 episodes of, and you're giving out to me for giving spoilers that something happened 13 years ago. You said your man's dead.
But no, that happened in the films.
But I literally haven't seen any of those films.
Well, you're not going to watch them now.
Vaguely tempted to watch WandaVision, and it's like no point actually. Don't worry.
No, it's not. No, that's not giving anything away because it can be set in any timeline because it's completely separate from everything that happens. But you just get the impression that because he's not alive in the Avengers universe anymore, that this is coming from her point of view, and she's kind of imagining that this is their life together if it did happen. So, but the characters are brilliant as well, by the way, because it's Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, and they're very, very good. She is playing up the Samantha and Bewitched thing, and the I'm so funny in the hands, and I just really enjoyed it. It was very, very good, and it's kind of nice to see a new production coming from Disney that's not the same as all the other ones, you know.
Okay. So that's on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, and there's another 2 episodes Friday, and then they're going to release another 2 episodes, so it's 9 altogether.
I would definitely wait till the end of everything has been out, so I can watch those at my own pace, as opposed to having to wait a week. I find that now something that we had to do when we were children, and I no longer want to do that because technology has moved on.
I don't agree with you. I think that I always feel like you should respect how the director wanted it to be seen, if you know what I mean. So if somebody released 2 episodes and then 2 episodes, they wanted it to be watched in a certain way. Now, maybe
I don't think the directors make those decisions, though. That's the decision of the company.
They do for me.
The company who pays it,
yeah, but if you're watching something week by week, I think it just sinks in a lot more. I think if you're binge watching something, you can get into 5 or 6 episodes and be like, what the hell was happening in episode 1 again? I just think when you get away from WandaVision for a couple of episodes, you're thinking about it a little bit more. If you watch it in one big long binge, it kind of ruins it a little bit sometimes, you know.
Okay, well, we can disagree on that. What else are you watching? WandaVision, what else?
Actually, one of the things I watched last night was One Night in Miami. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. It's on Amazon Prime. It came out last week. I'd watched a half an hour of it, but when they give you the screeners for these things, they're usually a link just for your laptop, so you can't cast them anywhere or anything. And so you're just watching a laptop. And about a half an hour in, I actually want to watch this in a big screen because it's very, very good. It's a story of Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. And it's just after, he was Cassius Clay at the time. And it was his big win on a Sunny Liston in Miami. And the rumour was that the four of them went back to a hotel room afterwards and nobody really knows what happened. Did they have a party? Did they discuss civil rights movement? And it's kind of like a rethinking of what happened around that night. It's fascinating. It's directed by Regina King. I'm sure you remember her from If Beale Street Could Talk. She got an Oscar for that. She is she's worked in a couple of things as a director. She's put her time in, doing a couple of series and a couple of episodes here and there. And this is her first big production. And it's excellent. The four guys who played the four lead roles, not massive stars, haven't been in a lot of things before, but it's just a very interesting idea of these four guys who were so popular and so well known in the midst of a huge civil rights movement. What were they talking about? What happened in that room that night? And that's just obviously all speculation, but that's what she deals with here. It's very good. Dips a little bit in the middle, gets a little bit boring, but towards the end, it's just fantastic. Really, really good.
So it's a movie?
It's a movie, yeah. I have to say that the guy who plays Jim Brown, is absolutely incredible. I'll just, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he is excellent as Jim Brown. There's this scene where he goes, one of the guys that he was a massive fan of his, he goes back to where he was from, lives a hugely rich guy, huge plantation house, and they're out talking on the porch, and your man says, oh, I need to go and move some furniture, and Jim Brown goes, oh, I'll come and help you, and he goes, oh, we don't let people like you in the house. And it's just this realization of, God, he's the biggest guy in the NFL at the time, huge fan base, and one of these guys is so proud that he comes from the same area that he's from, and he still doesn't even want him in the house. It's brilliant. There are little nods like that all the way through to what's happening at the time. It's just excellent stuff.
Okay, so there's One Night in Miami and it's on Prime. What else?
The Missing. This is actually an old series that I couldn't believe was on Amazon Prime because I couldn't find it. When stuff disappears off BBC, it's really hard to get on the BBC player. But this is so good. It's Julian Baptiste is the detective in it. There's two different series and they deal with different stories in the two different series. The first one is a young boy who disappears in France, and the second is a young girl who disappears. And there's a tie-in series then called Baptiste that's on Netflix. That's kind of his story as well, but all different detective stories. But they're brilliantly written. The two guys who write this, Harry and Jack Williams, their script is excellent, and the twists and turns, you won't see a lot of them coming. But it was 2017, I think, the first series came out. So you might have missed it, and it is so worth your time. It's really, really good. Really good if you're looking for something.
It's called The Missing.
The Missing, yeah.
And that's
it's on Amazon Prime. So when some of the titles come up, you're kind of like, oh, that doesn't actually look that great. I think the photo on it actually doesn't do it justice. It is a brilliant series. And
Baptiste is on Netflix.
Baptiste on Netflix, yeah.
Is that any good?
Yeah. They're all brilliant. They're all BBC productions, all written by the same guys, all the same kind of ideas, really, really good thrillers. And you really, you can't just dip in the middle of this. You have to pay attention from the start or you won't know what's going on, which makes them brilliant.
I watched Lupin. It's decent. The French Sherlock Holmes.
I haven't got to that yet, but everyone's raving about it. And another one that just kind of appeared on Netflix out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's obviously French. And it's good. I mean, if you like Sherlock Holmes, then you will like this.
Yeah, I think a lot of those kind of escapist thrillers are so popular at the moment as well, and people are just looking for something that's 2 or 3 series that they can really binge on because they're just sitting at home all the time.
Yeah, now this is only 5 episodes and there will be a season 2. That's again, I was like, I wish I'd waited to watch this until the season 2 is out. But anyway, I didn't, so I have to wait now.
No, patience.
All right, Sue, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million.
It's Sue with us every Thursday telling you what to watch on whatever platform you have. Sinné Uamsa Mila Buikas O'Cree is the shortest retirement statement that I can remember, and it's from Michael Dara Macaulay. That's all from me. Thanks so much from the bottom of my heart. That's our non-literal translation there. 8 All-Ireland medals, 10 Leinster titles, 2 All-Stars, and the Footballer of the Year in 2013. He put together an absolutely sensational career. And from reading Bernard Brogan's book and from hearing the interviews, kind of obviously somebody who was a leader in the group in terms of the approach to training sessions, leading mindfulness sessions. That was one of the things that came across, even when he knew he wasn't going to be in the team. That group of those players who kept with the team to keep driving the standards on. When it looked like you kind of felt on that the team might get caught in recent seasons, it never happened. And I actually think that one of the reasons why it never happened is because players stayed on an extra year when they weren't going to get minutes. Like, I don't know how many minutes he got this year. It could be 0. It could be nearly 0 for Bernard Brogan in terms of the big competitive matches that mattered in his last couple of years as well. and they kept going, they kept showing up, and they kept driving standards.
And that's the key thing that brings them to a whole other level compared to every other team in the country. When you have somebody who is a former footballer of the year, who is maybe not starting every game and driving standards on. I think that maybe it just became apparent near the end of the season that he wasn't going to be in the starting team. I think maybe early on, there was definitely a sense this season that he could definitely contribute from the start. There's always a place for him, I think, off the bench, even in that Dublin squad over the last year, because of the athlete that he is and how in brilliant shape he kept himself down through the years. Like, there are so many moments for him post 2013 as well where he'll kind of be remembered, where I guess his position was always the one that was under a little bit of threat, where there was always the sense that, oh, let's just push James McCarthy into midfield to partner Brian Fenton post 2015. And it seemed that Jim Gavin especially resisted that for so long. And of course, that's down to James McCarthy being a brilliant half-back. But I think the main reason for that was that Michael Dara-McCauley was a brilliant midfielder. And of course, he was playing alongside possibly the best midfielder to ever lace a pair of Gaelic football boots at Brian Fenton.
Not at the start, though. Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. And I think for that reason, he's going to be so fondly remembered. Like, there's nothing about him that you could say he was underrated or underappreciated in any way, because I'm sure you'll see over the next couple of hours the Dublin fans and the tributes will be glowing towards him, because as a guy off the pitch as well, like, we've had him in studio a couple of times. He's such a down-to-earth fella, and the work that he does in his own professional life as well is absolutely brilliant. And he'll continue to do that, and he'll continue to contribute to sport in Dublin City in a really meaningful way over the next little while.
Yeah, and society beyond. That's the bit. You kind of, for, you know, like, you can't, the entire team isn't like him, but certainly if he is one of the leaders of your team and he's putting his head above the parapet and trying to make a difference to the community that he's in on a daily basis, and using the fame of being one of the most famous footballers in the country to help with that as a force for good, you know, that's really all you can ask for from the people who are representing their county. So also unbelievable competitive instinct. Like, Narky, like, in key moments was there getting in people's faces and starting fights and not backing, not taking a step backwards, which again is an aspect of that Dublin team that sometimes we don't talk about, but it comes from the tone setters. You know, James McCarthy was hard and quiet and wouldn't really start stuff, but Michael Dara would happily start some things along the way if they needed to be started.
Oh, well, he wouldn't take a backward step, that's for sure. I think this is an immediate loss, like, for all the reasons that you talk about there, for the personality that he is, and undoubtedly driving standards on in training. But, like, as I say, he keeps himself in such good shape. I think there's a material loss here to not having him around the squad as a player. Like, maybe you only really notice it in the league when the standards are a little bit less when he's not around in the league or the early stages of the championship. But no, I think that, like, as I say, if you're pulling James McCarthy and he's now your midfielder alongside Fenton for the foreseeable future, what the demands that places on your defence, I think this is an immediate loss, I think. So he is going to be missed. And obviously, well, have you got two? Paddy Andrews, have you got more than two retirements so far in the Dublin setup? I think this is probably just the second one. So retirement season rages on. Well,
Paddy Andrews is going to join us on the show tomorrow. Adrian's going to be in as well. And that's going to be a chat with him about his career with Dublin. I'm looking forward to hearing that, because, again, one of those characters we don't know that much about, but actually anytime you do get those little glimpses of it, you kind of see that there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with him. So that's at 8 o'clock tomorrow. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Right, let's hear from Paul O'Donovan. He was in conversation with Joe Malloy about looking forward to the rest of this year and hopefully the Olympic Games. And of course, if you missed anything today, our full ROG chat is available on YouTube or to podcast. Brian O'Driscoll will join us next Tuesday morning for the Centre's Depth Chart.
Okay, so very happy to say we have with us Olympic silver medalist and FBD Insurance Ambassador as well, Paul O'Donovan. Paul was announcing today, very nice initiative, the recipients of the FBD Make a Difference programme. It's in conjunction with the Olympic Federation of Ireland, and the fund will assist Olympic hopefuls in their preparation for the Games. Paul O'Donovan, always great to talk to you. How are you?
Thanks very much for having me, Joe. Like you're saying, it's great to be here with FBD to help them launch this new initiative to make a difference to the younger up-and-coming guys. And sometimes they're in a little bit of a tricky situation because it takes a long time training at that top level to really bridge the gap up to the elite guys and to be able to contend with them. And sometimes there's just people can't do it just because there's too much of an expense, or they can't pay levies to go on a training camp, or say move in rowing's example, rent a house down in Cork to train at the rowing centre. So these little extra bits will hopefully help make a difference to those younger guys to commit, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition now in the near future.
No, I can imagine. Listen, we can't all be on the Graham Norton show, Paul, you know?
Yeah, that's going back a long time now, Joe. We're living in the past, man.
Yeah. I never asked you about that, by the way. Was that a fun experience?
It was good fun, actually. Yeah, I'm not much of a kind of a media guy or a talkative person, but Graham, in fairness, he just made everything so smooth for us, very nice and friendly, and like he's a rock star, and so are all those other guys that were on with us, and just very nice, open, friendly, chatted to us very well, and that. But like we always say, and when the brothers with me as well, that we're kind of happiest when we're out there on the boat doing the rowing and putting in the hard miles, and then hopefully getting the results then at the regattas. So it's kind of nice to try out those things, see what it's like a little bit, so that you're never left wondering. But a good experience as well to realise that we were happiest doing what we were doing initially, which is out there rowing. So you got to do a little bit of the media stuff as well, get some publicity out there for FBD, and also just so that other younger people in the sport can kind of take an appreciation for it as well, and have some confidence in what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're happier on the boat. Gary's definitely happier on the Graham Norton show.
You're probably right. No, I know he likes the rowing, in fairness to him. Yeah.
And now backstage, are you all sitting around together having a good time? I mean, there's definitely some guests who come out in the Graham Norton show. They've had a few drinks.
I'd say there probably is sometimes, yeah. So we were there. Well, you see, they record. It's not done live, so they record it over a long period. So the rest of them were out there for a while before us, and we were just kind of in the backstage. And they have a bar there, like you can horse into drinks if you want. But we're athletes now, Joe. We wouldn't be drinking too much of that type of thing. We have to be careful. And then we joined the couch then a little bit into the recording, but then I'm trying to. It was Graham and Michael and James. Then took myself and the brother out to dinner. Then afterwards we had a kind of a good evening chatting to them, and just real nice lads. And
who's the James? Sorry,
McAvoy.
Oh, check you out, James. Would you go away, James McAvoy?
Yeah, I'm not great at names, so I'm trying to not say the wrong one.
Okay,
but no, they're just very, very nice down to earth lads as well. Cool. And it was kind of good grounding for us to see that they were much bigger superstars than we were.
Yeah,
and they were still kind of real nice, pleasant people, you know.
Okay. So it was the O'Donovans, Graham Norton, James McAvoy out for dinner in London,
and Michael Fassbender.
Here. That's not. Come on, that's a good night out.
We were saying we're athletes, Joe. We were sensible. Come on now.
Hey, that's brilliant that you all went out for dinner afterwards, because often with these things, it's right, we're done. That's a wrap, everybody. Goodbye, go home, separate. That's kind of cool. You all went out and made a night of it.
Yeah, we were nearly kind of thinking that would happen ourselves, and then we were shocked in that they said we're going here for a bite of grub there. Do you wanna join us? And we said sure. We've no other plans. We might as well. So it was a nice evening. Nice. Good experience.
Amazing. I didn't realize all that.
Yeah.
Fassbender is a man with charisma.
He's unbelievable, isn't he?
Oh, he's unbelievable. Yeah.
Class act. He's a rock star. A good looking chap as well, so he is.
Bloody hell. I mean, you don't need to tell me. He sure is. There was even a video of him in Kerry a couple of years ago where he got up on stage and sang a song at a wedding. And sure, he can sing as well. I mean, he can do everything.
Actually, he is everything, Joe. He's it all, like.
Yeah. So, sorry, that was a hell of a sidetrack. What's that's 6, 7, going on 7 years ago now, would it be?
Not quite that, no, I suppose.
Oh, 16, yeah, sorry, going on 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed, time flies when you're having fun.
Sure does. So, how's life? Where are you in the world at the moment?
In Cork now, so we'll be training full-time out at the National Rowing Centre here.
How's it going?
I think good, yeah. Getting a lot of miles done. That's kind of, I'd say, the main thing we do this time of year, but it's the main thing we do at every stage of the year is put in a lot of miles. And we've been lucky. The weather's been reasonably nice. Sometimes during the winter it gets quite breezy and too choppy, out in the water that you can't get out, but nearly every day we've been out in the boat, which is good, because a lot of time we end up going to Spain or somewhere like this for training camps. We've not done that yet this year on account of not wanting to travel too much and keep that to a minimum. So training's been going well otherwise here.
Okay, good. Actually, something I wanted to ask you about, because we had a good chat. You and Gary were on a couple of months back, maybe more than a few months back now. August, I think, 2020. The whole of last year has blurred into one weird period. But we had a good chat about various techniques, you know, and we were talking about your shoulders. You have a bit more flexibility in your shoulders and gives a broader stroke, and the chemistry in a boat and all these kind of things. And I meant to ask you at the time and I forgot, but you've just planted it in my mind there when you're talking about the choppy water. Is there an Irish style of rowing on account of the climate or the type of water, in the same way that there is an Irish style of football or an Irish style of rugby, etc.? When you're at a kind of regatta with rowers from all over the country, would there be a particularly Irish style, or does that not apply to rowing?
I think there are very subtle differences, and it's probably a little bit hard to describe how one would row in choppy water, but it's more of a kind of a reactive experience, because the oars are kind of tipping the waves there that are coming up. So you just have to learn to be kind of reactive with the boat now to correct things, rather than a particular kind of drilled into a kind of style. And like that, we noticed it, especially we went to competitions in the earlier years, and there would have been kind of windy regatta venues and stuff, and just some places there. We always pick on the Austrians for this, because they must have no wind there or something, because they were really a good crew that we used to race against. But anytime there was any bit of a chop on the water, they just couldn't handle it and ended up miles back. And we this was in our earlier days, we used to excel there a bit in rougher water and beat people that maybe we wouldn't have beaten the day before when it was a bit calmer. And I think it is just from those habits of reacting a little bit to the choppy conditions. And I think especially kind of from Skibbereen as well, because I did a lot more training down in Skib this year than we would have done in the past number of years, because we're usually at the National Rowing Centre here. But down there is a different ball game again, because I think it's just down a bit further in the southwest, so it's more open, so it gets a lot windier and choppier, and there's the tide down there as well, so you're just being thrown all over the place. And one of the first days I went out there in the summer, and I was like, what the hell kind of rowing is this? How did we do it all the time? But after a couple of spins and then a couple of weeks down there, you don't take any notice whatsoever. So I think that actually has stood to us over the number of years. And I think myself and Gary's, like, the first event we ever won probably in the international scene was the European Championships in 2016 in Brandenburg in Germany, and that was the windiest regatta we've ever rowed at. So we think probably that did kind of play into our hands there. But since then we have kind of shown ourselves as well on the flat cam water that we can win some races too. So
very interesting. Yeah, that phrase "train ugly" jumped to mind there, you know, and it does strike me as an advantage. And we see it in lots of sports. You see it in golf. People around the world who play their golf without the wind, and they pitch up with a British Open. They don't know what to do. They can't play in that wind. They can't keep the ball flight beneath the wind. Their swing goes to pot in the wind. So it sounds like, you know, you're training in the worst of it, and sure, then you can handle a flat, calm day as well, I presume, just as well as the Austrians. Yeah,
that's exactly it. I think people panic as well when they see it a bit rough, because they know it is a bit challenging. And just when you are a bit more comfortable with it, you're kind of happy in yourself, but you take a bit of a boost in knowing that most of the opposition are going to be a little bit worried about it. Yeah. So there might be a little bit of a psychological advantage to that too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And would you know, Paul, what the story in Tokyo is? Like, would that have the reputation of being flat and calm, or a bit choppier, or do you know?
Quite the opposite, Joe. It's very, very choppy down there, I believe, because they've actually built it in the bay there in Tokyo. They call it the Sea Forest Waterway Rowing Park or something. But basically, there's a little bit of an island there, kind of a thing, but they put kind of dams at either end of it. So it is out in the sea and very open. And just once the afternoon comes around, the wind blows like hell, I believe. So
Okay.
we'll be in favour of that.
Well, look, you've that in your back pocket if Austria are listening.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we won't post this up in Austria so they can put it up in the dressing room door. Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, it makes total sense. And when I spoke to you guys last year as well, you were making the point that when news came through that the Olympics had been postponed, that you dialed down the intensity of your training a little bit. That it would have been impossible really to keep the intensity of training you were doing up right the way through for another 12 months. Plus. So I presume now, are you starting to ramp up again and really empty the tank, or what's the prep now into the summertime?
We are, that's right. So, like I say, I'm still in college here in UCC. So I had been taking time out last year, but once they postponed the Olympics, they left me signed back up to that. So I was doing more of that during the summer and less training, and I was doing that up until December. And then I kind of said that it was time then. So I taken a leave of absence from there. And I've been training full time since then, and joined the rest of the guys that were out in the rowing centre, and we're kind of going full steam ahead now, pretty much because we want to select. We know we always talk about the Olympics are the end of July, and that's the main race that you want to peak for. But for us as well, our seats in the boat aren't secure, and we're doing the trial for that at the end of March. So we want to be in top shape at that stage as well, to make sure that we do secure our seats in the boat. So really have to have a good lead into that. And then there's kind of races from between April and June, we might do 2 or 3 international regattas, all going well. And then onto the Tokyo regatta. So really especially since December, you've been kind of going nearly full tilt at it.
Yes. So it's not a case in your world of, well, we don't do anything and then suddenly Tokyo comes around. It's competitive until then. And again, I'm kind of jogging memories here, but from memory, your place in the boat, pretty safe, without wanting to overstate things. And then you had obviously your brother, you had the likes of Shane O'Driscoll, you had the McCarthy brothers, Fintan and Jake, all, I guess, gunning to partner you, and obviously 4 into 1 doesn't quite go. When is that decision being made?
So that's going to be at the end of March, as I was saying.
Oh, so when you said your place is in the boat, that's what you meant? Yeah. Okay.
So mine isn't secure either, and the rest of the boys are getting pretty close to me, so it's all up in the air.
Yeah, for sure. Where does chemistry come into it? Like, so say there's numbers 1 and 2 in the pace. But say you're number 1, for instance, but say you've a better chemistry with the fella who's 3rd or 4th fastest for whatever reason. So as a pair, ironically, you and number 3, I don't want to use names here because it's not fair to everybody involved, but say you and number 3 work better as a pair than you and number 1. You and number 2. Can you turn around to the fella who's 2nd fastest and say, listen, as a pair, we're just going to have to go with 1 and 3 here. So unfortunately, even though you're 2nd fastest, you don't get a spot, or is it 1 and 2 no matter what?
No, so it's not 1 and 2. So we raced the singles initially just to kind of gauge how things are. I think in the lead up to Rio, myself and Gary were 1 and 2, and there was a kind of a significant drop back then to 3 and 4, where it was kind of decided that really no amount of chemistry would have made up that difference at the time. But since then, we still use the singles, but there could be 4 or 5 of us, and all really, really pretty close. So then what we do is we put those guys into doubles and actually test the combinations then in doubles, and to see who actually does make the fastest double. Yeah.
Okay.
So and for us, that is the most important thing.
Right, very interesting. For you, what's good chemistry on in a boat together? Not least in choppy waters where you have to be reactive. What makes for good chemistry or a good pairing?
It's kind of hard to describe, but the way I kind of think of it is when the double is going really well, it just feels like you're rowing in the single scull. It's very hard to tell that someone's actually rowing behind you, so that you're kind of using the momentum of the boat together and moving your masses together. Is kind of the main thing, really. And then there's kind of a little bit of the balancing issues, but it's every kind of combination has kind of balance issues, and it's kind of because most of what we're doing is quite slow training, real low intensity, that it's if you try and describe it as like riding a bike. If you're riding a bike pretty slowly, you're a bit more wobbly and more inclined to fall off, whereas if you're going pretty quick, it's just easier to keep it steady. So we kind of find that sometimes during those long spins that it kind of falls about a bit more, which is a bit more frustrating than anything, but it tends to happen in all combinations. There's not much you can do about it, but
you must in some ways be looking forward to getting that settled and behind you, because I know it's probably hung over the group for a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't really hang over us too much, and we're not kind of thinking about it day to day. And what we're doing is we're just kind of swapping around the combinations quite a bit, trying to give each a go with different partners and stuff like this. And they're reasonably consistent. Yeah. So Joe, there's a good bit of fun in that too, like testing out different combinations and stuff.
Shows there's depth of talent there as well. I mean, it's a tough problem for whoever doesn't get picked down the line, but it's a good problem to have for Irish rowing.
It is indeed, and it's not just in our event either. It's kind of across all events. So we leave Sunita there in the women's single. She's doing quite well, and she's pretty secure in that spot. But in the heavyweight women's group, then they've qualified a pair, and they've got enough depth now that they're going to try and put a four together and attempt to qualify that. And they won a medal actually at the European Championships. And then you've got the likes of Phil and Ronan, were kind of a new combination more or less in 2018 and 19, and won the silver medal at the World Championship. But Phil had to go back to work to finish his internship in the North during the summer. So a new guy, Darragh Lynch, jumped in with Ronan Byrne, and they took a medal at the European Championships. And there's kind of three girls going for the lightweight girls equivalent of what we're doing. So kind of across all boats now, there's medal winning crews and people to step into those crews as well that can still keep that medal potential. So it's really looking positive for the
super. And I'm sure, look, it's part of your legacy, even though you're too probably humble to admit it. But we see ourselves as boxing country when it comes to Olympics, but the rowing is right there as well, which is brilliant. What is the Olympic experience like, by the way, as in athletes village and your accommodation? Is it lonely? Is it great crack altogether and you're seeing people the whole time and there's a real sense of team? Is it stressful? Do you get cabin fever in those apartments? What was the experience of 16, and will you do anything differently in 21?
I suppose it's an okay experience, for us. We're well travelled by that stage, and we've been to a lot of regattas. So I suppose to describe it, it's just a big, almost village as such, which I don't know, is there, say 20 or 30 high-rise buildings, and some countries are taking up a whole one, some are shared between others. So we had the first 5 or 6 floors, and New Zealand had 10 or 15 floors above us. But just day to day out there then, what we found was the best routine was that traffic was pretty bad down in Brazil. So it was best to get up as early as possible, get the first bus down to the course, and kind of stay down there, do 2 spins and come back for lunch, and then go back and chill out in the apartment. But basically all the kind of rowers realised that was the best routine to take because the course was so far away. So for us, we were just kind of bumping into the whole time the same people that we'd see at all the other regattas anyway. But then I suppose there was, say, a bigger kind of an Irish contingent in, which, like you were saying, the boxers, that we used to have to share their weighing scales because we had one for the rowers, but we left that with the girls then because we knew that the boxing lads their room was pretty close to ours. And so when you'd be going down or going in the evening to just check the weight, she'd end up sitting there for 2 hours chatting with the lads, and you'd nearly forget about bedtime and stuff. So
that's nice. That's a nice outlet to have. Yeah, it
was kind of good to, and they were quite experienced lads there. Like there was Paddy Barnes and Michael Conlon and all these guys, and just how kind of chilled out they were about the situation kind of probably helped calm us down as well, because we were kind of newcomers to the scene, really.
Well, I know from speaking to a few athletes that almost the boxers have led the way in that sense of team. They're all individuals, but they're very much the boxing team, and maybe other disciplines have taken that on board a bit, that we're Team Ireland, let's hang out together, let's look out for each other, and that seems like a really nice thing. Quiet bunch, I'd say, the Boxers as well.
I know, in fairness, they'd be keeping a lid on things as well when they're competing themselves, yeah.
Would you go up to, say for instance 4 years ago, would it be really frowned upon to wander up to say hi to the New Zealand folk and how are things and make friends that way, or?
No, it wouldn't be frowned upon at all, and like that we know a lot of the roars from other countries as well anyway. So you just be chatting to them a bit, and sometimes you might be chatting to some of them, and someone from another sport would come along chatting to them, and they just introduce you or whatever. But then say we trained a lot in Seville, and the Angola and rowing team were training down there as well, so we were kind of we hung out with them quite a bit down there, and in the food hall we just go to dinner with them, and then some of their friends then from they do a lot of kind of Asian and African kind of rowing development camps. They're more of a developing nation, and so they'd have a load of friends from those countries as well who'd sit with them for dinner, and then we'd sit down with them and just have a chat about what life is like in their countries, and and what their rowing scene is like and stuff, which is it's pretty cool to find out about, you know. And
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And because the Olympics are curious as well in that at the start, obviously everybody is in competitive mode, and then with each passing day, it's like the end of school for different disciplines, and they're just running around causing muck, running amok, going to McDonald's all the time, and it gets more and more fun as it goes on, I hear.
Yeah, it's well, my experience is a bit different because I left maybe 2 or 3 days after our racing because I wanted to go back to a regatta in Rotterdam.
Did you? So could you have stayed and just enjoyed the Olympic experience and gone to events if you wanted to?
Yeah, you did, and so Gary did that, and he had a good time doing it. And but say for those 2 or 3 days, we scout in the evening and do a bit of partying and stuff like that. But all of that really is kind of happening outside of the Olympic Village.
Okay.
And it's more kind of with the spectators and stuff like that. And that's where all the crack is, because to be honest, like people say, oh, there's wild parties and madness goes on in the village and all sorts, and condoms everywhere and no condoms and who knows what going on. But there's none of that, because like literally up until 10 minutes before the closing ceremony, there's actually competitions going on.
Okay.
So
be frowned upon if the music was going too loud.
Yeah, you're right. You have to show a bit of respect going in there, and they're kind of checking everyone's bags and going through X-ray scanners and stuff like that, entering the village, so that you can't bring in alcohol or anything like that in there either. So
right, okay. And look, geez, I mean, this year of all years, it's going to be a different games. Hopefully it happens, and then when it does happen, it won't be as it was. That's for sure. Away from all that, I know you're pursuing your medical studies as a final point. How's that going? Where are you in that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a little bit through third year now.
Of how many?
4 years for the graduate entry program. So I finished off second year there during the summer, and kind of took it up until December this year. Then we were kind of doing some different rotations, and I said to them then at that stage that, look, I need to kind of focus on the rowing full time now to actually secure my seat in the boat to get to Tokyo. And they said, all right, so hopefully now we'll go and do that for the summer, and I'll pick things up again then afterwards.
Okay, very good. And has any area of medicine caught your eye?
I'd say I actually kind of find it all quite interesting, but I really like the idea of surgery. That's kind of what got me into going back to do it, and I've kind of seen a bit of it since, and I still really enjoy that. So we'll see, time will tell, and they put us through a lot of different rotations along the way, so I try and keep an open mind too.
Surgeons are a cocky bunch.
You reckon?
That's the word on the street.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're okay, but you don't think I could pull it off, no?
Oh no, I think you'll be the exception that proves the rule. You'll be the exception that proves the rule. I'm being very harsh on surgeons here. I think that's based on scrubs more than anything, to be honest.
Maybe, yeah. A bit of a reputation.
They do. Listen, it's good to check in with you. You are, and I always think it is always great to talk to you. You are one of our great athletes, and you just operate beneath the radar, but you're as good as it gets, really. So it's always good to hear from you. Hopefully the games go ahead. Hopefully you're there. Hopefully it goes well. I'm sure we'll talk to you in the meantime. But for the time being, Paula Donovan, FBD Insurance Ambassador as well, I should mention, and Paul was announcing the recipients of the FBD Make a Difference programme, and that's in conjunction with the Olympic Federation of Ireland. So the fund is going to assist Olympic hopefuls in their preparation for the Games. So Paul's had people texting him for money for the last few months, I would suspect. Good to talk to you as always, Paul. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Joe. Appreciate it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of